Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to MotorMotion E-Series. It's the Trak Racer TCR Cup, and we return to begin the American leg of our Season 3. It's round 4, and we begin with Laguna Seca. We've got Daytona and Watkins Glen coming up, not in that order, ironically, but today the focus is on the desert location in Monterey County in California. That is Laguna Seca, built for $1.5 million US, 66 years ago, hosting the IndyCar Series, IMSA Sports Car Series, and Moto America. The 2.238-mile circuit here in the desert location has 11 turns. That's not very many, but the turns that you do have are incredibly famous and incredibly dangerous. The likes of corkscrew up to the top of the hill towards the Rahal Strait. There are sausage curves that you need to avoid as much as possible in these cars, the Mazda 3 Group 4 cars, of course, and they will be suffering a lot of tire degradation today. There's a couple of strategy options on hand too for the drivers to contend with, and we will be seeing who can master this desert location here at the WeatherTech Raceway at Laguna Seca. Let's jump in to our slides and get this started. So, of course, in the commentary box, once again, it is myself, George Cooke, joined by Nick Pautasso, and our pit lane reporter in this very long pit lane will be Andrew Scott. And he might be running around the circuit, getting a few steps in because he's got a couple of hills to climb as he traverses the circuit. But welcome in, gentlemen. Lovely to have you back in once again to begin our American circuit. We've been flown over in pure style on a 787, and we have landed and made our way out to Laguna Seca. Nick, welcome back.
Thank you, George. G'day there. G'day, Andrew. G'day, everyone that is joining us here on the stream. I mean, what a location. It's one of the favorite tracks here amongst the MotorMotion E-Series community. It's a very fast-flowing track. It's all about just very technical, pretty much all one line, single file going around this 3.6 kilometer circuit. So I think qualifying has to become a very crucial focal point to everyone that comes into this race today. It's very important to not kiss those sausage curves, but just to ride them and try to get the maximum you can with these cars, because with this short wheelbase of the Mazda 3 and a very short car, it produce some pretty close racing. And I think as well, we're gonna probably, even though I say it's gonna be single file, we could be seeing side-by-side action, probably not for one corner, it could be for basically the whole track, just kind of like what we saw previously at the end of the European leg at the Nürburgring. We saw so much great racing there. We saw, Lobby 1 putting some extreme performances in the wet to dry, and now we're going to be seeing these guys going full dry running here. I don't think we've seen any rain here over the last 24 hours, so everyone can count their lucky stars that it's not raining here at Laguna Seca.
Couldn't agree more. The rain here would be a very interesting additional factor. And over to Andrew Scott on our pit lane. Mate, welcome back again. And maybe having a few technical difficulties there with our pit lane reporter. We'll come back to him shortly. Let's. Oh, there he is. Okay, he's got his mic unmuted now. Andrew, welcome in.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just talking to some wannabes in the pit lane there. Sorry, guys. But yeah, g'day, everyone. I'm really looking forward to this race. I really love this track, Laguna Seca. I'm really interested to see what strategies are going to play out once again. I'm hearing murmurings in the pit lane that the tyres are going to be super critical. There's a pretty big tyre delta between the control tyre and the option tyre here today as well. Plus that long pit lane and that long pit stop duration means that the two stoppers are going to have to really be lightning fast with their lap pace in order to make that two-stop strategy work. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see it all play out.
That's right, and we will see it play out over the course of 28 laps here for round 4. Time of day will be afternoon. All racing tyres are permitted, but everyone has to use the medium tyre at least once in this race, and that medium tyre can go pretty far, although you'll probably be seeing most try and get to about the 17 or 16 lap period and then do about 10 on the softs. That seems to be the prevalent strategy, at least for the one stopper, but as Andrew said, you're going to have to be going lightning quick with those soft tires if you're going to be doing a two-stop strategy. So, of course, Laguna Seca, beautiful 11 corners, 2.23 miles, that's 3.6 kilometers. The fastest lap record here, a 108.4, won by Alex Palau, the McLaren driver. He was in a Dallara DW12 in 2023. For IndyCar, that is times that we're not going to be seeing today, although some drivers have been setting some absolutely crazy times in these Mazda 3s. When you're on the softs, you feel like you've got infinite grip for at least 1 or 2 laps, and then you start to feel that degradation come in. So expect to see a lot going into the pits and refreshing those tires during the qualifying session. And we will have our qualifying results coming up. We're going to start with Lobby 1. We've got Lobby 1 and Lobby 2 coverage for your viewing pleasure tonight. Of course, last week it was the endurance. We focused on Lobby 1, and we do have another endurance race coming up later in the season where we will focus on Lobby 2. So let's talk, Nick, about qualifying for Lobby 1.
So qualifying has wrapped up for Lobby 1, and we have a mixed grid here tonight, but it is basically the Flying Dutchman that leads the way yet again. It is Steph Franson for Street to Track, who's been putting on an absolute masterclass in this season so far in 2024 of season 3 of the Trak Racer TCR Cup. And then we have the lightning fast Morgan Davey and Nick Pfaff, the deadly duo of Asta Racing, lining up in 2nd and 3rd position. We have Matt Donetti in Hassel 1 Motorsport, getting that car up towards the pointy end, as we always know. As he always does, he's doing an amazing job for that team and getting himself up really high up onto that grid. Boris Blazenik for Wicked Awesome Racing in 5th place. And then we have late substitute in obviously we have in our commentator, George Cooke. So he's going to be, we get to spectate him around, Andrew and myself.
Yay.
We get to enjoy we get to enjoy his racing. Maybe the cameraman might be a bit too shy to point the camera on him, but we'll see. I mean, I think George Cooke must have paid him a few extra hundreds, must have slipped him a few hundreds to not show the camera on him, but we'll see how he goes. And in 6th place. And then 7th place, we have Scott Taylor, the leader of Gridline Racing. That rounds up our top 7. Then we get to 8th place, Tony Griffin for Mad Turtle Racing, Jason Oswald and Brett Allen rounding up the top 10. Then we have Andrew Enns, the 2nd of the Mad Turtles, just outside the top 10, only just missed out by 0.03 of a second to get into 10th place. A very close qualifying for him. Michael Daly in 12th, Shane Attard, the 2nd driver for Kung Fu Racing. So both key drivers, main drivers in Kung Fu Racing, all having substitutes at this time round, with Shane Attard replacing Shannon Jones permanently for the remainder of the Trak Racer TCR Cup in 2024. Then we have Mark Hasseldine in 14th place, and then we have a new name, a privateer name, in Nicholas Cooke joining us here tonight. So it's going to be exciting to see what this man can do in 15th place, but it's actually great to have that extra driver on the grid, so more opportunities for those drivers behind to try and get themselves up towards the front there. So, gentlemen, it's going to be a very fast race. I'm very excited to see who can take out that top position, but the top 3 is looking very spicy.
Couldn't agree more, and Asta Racing producing a good qualifying there. Steph Franson still looks untouchable at this point. We're still really keen to see him in a good dry race with all the other top teams as well and see exactly how that battle goes. But nonetheless, I think we're ready for Lobby 1, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to go out on track. The drivers are on the grid. Their cars are all rearing to go. So let's go and see some TCR action as we begin with Lobby 1. Okay, we've got the lights going. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it will be Steph Franson leading us away. And there's a jump start on the grid. Something's happened there. Oh, it does look like the Kung Fu Racing car. He's had a problem. That's bunched up the grid at the back, but it is Steph Franson who has begun with a nice launch off the line. The Asta Racing car's going and doing a bit of early defending to make sure that they don't let the likes of Matt GD51 get through. Nick Pfaff has lost a position, though, already, and that's Budsy. Isa Budsy coming on through for War. Good start from him. GLR Scotty still holding on to P6. Then it's Malevolent. And then it's the Jason Oswald in 8th place. So Kung Fu Racing having a shocking start at the beginning of this race. And they'll have a lot of work to do in the next 28 laps to begin. But we head now towards the first part going up the hill. This is a new section of the track that was brought in 20 or 30 years ago to make it, quote unquote, safer. And whether they've done that or not successfully, we shall see. Nonetheless, we go up the hill and into one of the trickiest corners. Bit of gravel on the edge of that corner. Steph Franson trying to use every single bit of the track. right at the start of this race. He needs to get himself a good lead to stop the likes of Morgan Davey in the 33 car for Astor Racing getting on past. And what a start from Matt GD51, really top stuff. He's up into the podium positions already. Nick Pfaff behind him. We come through Rady Curve for the first time now, and looking down the grid, GLR Scotty still holding on to P6, and P10, our privateer, that's Nicholas Cooke, has found his way up into P8. That's a stunning start for the brand new driver, his first race in MotorMotion E-Series in these Mazda 3 cars, and he's already up within the top 10 and starting very, very well. It's a bit of tyre screeching going on in the background too. Handsome Banana, that is Steph Franson across the line, leading us in across the line to begin the second lap of this race.
Wow, some great calls there, George, but what a start there by Nicholas Cooke, all the way from 15th to 8th place. I've been watching his onboard cameras the whole lap there. My goodness, obviously we got caught up with an incident with one of the Kung Fu racing drivers just getting caught off the lights there, but he managed to come through and just skate his way through. Very lightning reflexes for Nicholas Cooke to get himself all the way up into P8. So what can the man do? What can the Kiwi do in position A? We'll have to wait and see as we're on lap 2 of 28. As we said, the Flying Dutchman, Steph Franson, the championship leader, leading the way ahead of Davey. Matt Donetti having a really good start there. Nick Pfaff dropping a position there. Scotty has gained a couple. And we have Andrew Ernst, who actually qualified in 11th place, all the way up into P7. So very good start there by the Mad Turtle Racers. But there have been a few cars that were caught up in that early incident there. As we said, we have Nick Cooke in 8th, and then we have George Cooke, the man himself, that is bringing us the stream tonight in 9th place. So very good start there. Some very even starts there by the top runners, by the top 5, but a couple of places gained, especially for this man. And P8, what a start it has been for Nicholas Cooke. But then we have George Cooke, not related, ladies and gentlemen. They have very different surnames. One's with an E, one's cool, one's not. And with George Cooke, that is back in 8th place. That drops Nicholas Cooke down to 9th.
Yes, indeed, and I do have some information about what happened at the start. Unfortunately, that man, George Cooke, I don't know if you guys know him, he seems to be a pretty cool contender sometimes, but he did manage to do a false grid start. He got off the line, hit it into reverse, and put Tony Griffin into a very awkward position right at the beginning. Oh, we've got a bit of overtaking going on here. The two Cookes and Ents now having at it. That's Malevolence up in P7 now defending. He's going to have the outside line, and that's going to be Kung Fu Racing up the inside. Ooh, Nicholas Cooke going for a look as well. There's a bit of contact, bit of paint exchanged. The Mad Total livery creators will not be happy about that one, but P10 does make his way up back into P10, and that's a couple of positions lost for Ent in a couple of corners. Very unfortunate for him. We continue looking down the grid. There's Alan. We've got Jason Oswald here for Street to Track. He's currently in P11. Michael Daly in P12. Mark Hasseldine has made up a few positions up into P13. Shane Attard, not a good start for him by the looks of things. And then Tony Griffin right at the bottom of the grid after being stuck behind a Kung Fu Racing car at the beginning of this race. But it is Steph Franson who leads us away, heading towards the 4th lap of this race. And he has put a decent gap onto Morgan Davey already.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that very handsome gap there by the Handsome Banana in 1st place. But I was just going to say that I was going to put a little bit of a play on words. The two Cooks cooking up some turtle dish there, so they got past them in 9th place.
I like
so
that.
There we go. So we're gonna have to play some puns here, ladies and gentlemen. But let's cut over to our pit reporter for the first time in this broadcast during this race, Ando Scott. Ando, what can you tell us? We've seen some good starts there by a couple of the drivers. It looks like Steph Franson is up towards the front. He's actually pulling away from Morgan Davey and Matt Donetti. Is he gunning for a different strategy, or is he actually running the compulsory tyres first?
Yeah, it's yet to be seen what their pit strategy will be, but yeah, there is a difference here, folks. It's pretty obvious. One guy's on the softs and he's checked out, and the other podium places are taken by the guys running mediums, and they're just pacing their way through. But yeah, the tyre wear's definitely coming into play already. These medium tyres will cross over with the softs at some stage. So the soft tyres will, as they wear, get slower, and the mediums will end up being the quicker tyre for a few laps. So expect to see those medium runners come back at the soft runners in this first stint.
Yeah, the drop-off between the two tyres is quite a fair bit, especially around this 3.6 kilometre circuit. There's a lot of, you're pretty much just basically one part of the track, you're just turning so much, as we see a move there by George Cooke has gone past Scott Taylor up into P5. So a very nice recovery drive after a false start by the man in the Kung Fu Racing Mazda 3. But yeah, I was going to say, like, all the cars here, you're basically turning. You get a little bit of a sigh of relief as you go onto the Rahal straight, especially down this pit straight going into the Andretti hairpin. But everything else is always stop starts, and you just really are putting so much pressure on that left-hand side of the car. So obviously protecting that left side of the car is very important as well, Ando.
Yeah, it is. I think it's being a anti-clockwise circuit. It might be the right side that runs out first, but both front tyres do cop a hammering around here, that's for sure. And yeah, you can see some differences already. In some people are good on tyres, and some people are definitely using them as a consumable resource, let's call it that. But also it's good to see at the front, very interesting, Steph Fransen's going for a different shift point here. So he's learning how to save fuel, or he's learning, I think he's adjusting his driving a little bit here, folks. Although his tyre wear's not looking great at this stage.
Oh, and we've just had some contact there. Mark Hasseldine does run into Jason Oswald as they head towards turn 5. That has put them neither at worse for wear, but it did put Jason Oswald a little bit offline. He'd have to close the door on Matt Hasseldine, who did go for a little bit of a send. I also have to report that we've had Boris Blazenek for War. He unfortunately went wide at turn 6 and lost himself a number of positions. He was running right up there in the top 6. Unfortunately finds himself down in P11, so there's another on the grid. He's got a lot of work to do to recover in this race. Interesting to hear about the tyre difference as well. The softs, of course, can be used as a commodity, and you can absolutely send it. As I understand it, there's a couple of seconds at least difference between the lap times you can get effectively with the softs when they've got plenty of grip on them, and the mediums when they've got plenty of grip on them.
Yeah, it's definitely a significant delta. So you want to minimise the number of laps you spend on medium tyres in this race. But of course, you don't want to be leaking oil with worn softs either.
No, absolutely right. So as we can see there on the mini-map, we can just see Steph Fransen has checked out, and Morgan Davies leading that secondary pack of medium runners. Ahead of him, or behind him, is Matt Donerty, and then his teammate in Nick Pfaff in 4th place. But George Cooke and Scott Taylor are looking to work together to try and get themselves back up towards the front of the field. They're not too far away from Nick Pfaff, probably about a second and a half behind Nick Pfaff, so they have to just try and work together, maybe just try not to make any more overtakes, maybe save a bit of fuel, play a different game that the guys that are running up ahead of them, because they know they're catching them, and they're actually catching them quite quickly. It was Scott Taylor with a 1 minute 28.8, and then the fastest lap being 1:27.2. We're looking at about roughly about a 1.5 delta time between the softs and the mediums. So these guys are just trying to make sure they can get to that critical number, whether it's going to be a 2-stop or they're going to go for that 1-stop strategy. But it looks like the man that looks like they might be getting closest to making a move and having a little bit more opportunity, Nick Pfaff. He's gaining, and then he loses, and then he gains. I think that's the nature of this track as well, George. You can just get caught up in the dirty air. As soon as you close up on the rear wing of the car ahead of you, you just basically lose so much downforce, and it's very hard to find different lines around here because it's all single file, and in a way it just becomes very hard to execute a move. The only way you can probably do it is when you actually do it in the pit lane.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of driver adjustments having to be made. You're accounting for how close you're running behind a car. You're adjusting for how much grip you're getting in each particular corner. You've got to be very aware of which tire is degrading more, which corner you're taking. Are your outer tires on the right? Are they, when you go around a left-hander, are they a bit more worn, which they usually will be at a track like this, which does have predominantly those left turns, so the right tire gets absolutely decimated in comparison to the left. So you've got to be adjusting constantly for the situation around you, and you will find yourself at some point getting caught out by the calculation you're doing into every single corner, and suddenly the car is not turning as much as you'd like it to be, and you're going to have to go a lot slower through there. So the best drivers out on the grid are going to be the ones who are going to adjust to those conditions of the tires, the corner you're in, and the situation around you with regards to the other cars the best. And it's a tricky calculation to do. Everyone will be caught out at least once during a race like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'm looking at the minimap, the top 6 is just really in a class of their own. Then we have the peloton, we can call it the peloton, right behind there, that leads from Andrew Ernst all the way down to 15th place. That is a huge, huge bunch of cars there. all coming into the final corner. You can just see them snaking through the final corner, and they're also bunched up amongst each other. So very different strategies. People just trying to run away and just pull away as much as they can. We can see, obviously, with Andrew Ernst and Michael Daly, actually a much better run this time around for Michael Daly, as we see Brett Allen, unfortunately, pick up a 1 second penalty. Could have been potentially cutting a little bit too much of the corkscrew at turn 8 and 8A. But yeah, it's like a big peloton with these guys all the way starting from 7th down to 15th place. So it's anyone's game at the moment of who can get themselves up into 7th. But it's all going to have to come into the pit lane as well, like what these guys can do, whether they go for a sneaky undercut, maybe just save a bit of tyres, save a bit of fuel. It's going to be very hard to judge to see who actually comes out on top in this secondary pack.
Through goes Soul Slayer on P-Tender. P-Tender, of course, P10 in his name, so that's where he obviously prefers to finish in most races. But nonetheless, he's going to go for a little bit of a switch that there on Boris Blaznik. Very nice move indeed. And unfortunately, that was actually Boris Blaznik who did the overtake into turn 5. Does get that position back, does Nicholas Cooke into turn 6 and through the Rahal straight. Nice little run through the corkscrew as well. Bought himself a little bit of time from the the wicked awesome racing driver in Boris Blaznik, who will be falling back into the grips of Tony Griffin. But this is a four-way battle to get up into the top 10, and none of them are letting up at the moment. We have an early pit stopper. On lap 8, Michael Daly does decide it's time to throw out those soft tyres and go for a long stint. That's a very long stint, though. It'll be 20 laps on the mediums. Got to make sure he's got full fuel and doing a bit of fuel saving too. It is entirely possible to get that done, 20 laps on the mediums, but you're going to have to be pretty conservative on those tyres.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if we cut it to Ando, who's actually in the pit lane watching Michael Daly get his tyres changed right now. Do you think it's possible, Ando, that he can get 20 laps on a tank, and especially with tyres?
It's probably going to be the tyres the limiting thing. Even the mediums, I don't think will last 20. So I'm pretty sure this gridline race has committed himself to a two-stopper now, and I think there might be some others two-stopping this race as well. Just looking through the grid, I'm hearing murmurings from the street to track camp that maybe the race leader is on a two-stopper.
Yeah, well, he's 1.2 seconds off in that delta going into Rainy Curve, as 1.2 seconds is quite a fair bit, setting his fastest at 1 minute 27.2 on lap 2. But we can see there as the times are starting to get, they're starting to lose so much time throughout all of his laps. But he's still pulling a gap over Morgan David, which is actually the most impressive thing out of a lot. So 29 flat. So he's now into the 29s, where the fastest was 27.3, so nearly 2 seconds slower than his fastest lap. But the amazing thing is that the Flying Dutchman is really gaining so much time. And Morgan Davey, that last lap, at 1 minute 30.4, he's actually not gaining any time at all. So the street to track boys, yes, they might have to come into the pit lane and they're going to run a two-stop strategy, but it's so far it's working for them, as we see Nick Pfaff has actually finally made the move on Matt Donetti to take back P3.
Indeed, and he's now dropped to P4 as well. So, well, not dropped, but he's in P4 at the moment. And that is going to be... I think, honestly, it makes me feel like these chaps here, these three, Morgan Davey, Nick Pfaff, and Donetti, I think they might all be on the medium tyres. They're just those lap times are not kind of consistent with the soft, because the softs will last between 10 and 12 laps, generally speaking. So if they're using the softs at all, they'd still be doing 28, even if they were trying to save the softs. So to see them in the 130s, almost certainly they're on the medium tyres at the moment. Gila Scotty has moved up ahead of George Cooke. Myself, can't remember where that happened. I think I made a mistake somewhere. We'll see. We won't catch it on a replay. But nonetheless, Gila Scotty's driving well at the moment. Pretty consistent on the times. Couple of bad laps there, but that's probably as a result of him being behind the Kung Fu Racing car, who's following on now. And I think we will see some of those who are on the softs now start to look into the pits. Yep, that looks like George Cooke is into the pits. 50% of fuel, and we'll be switching out, I think, going for a one-stop strategy in this situation.
There we go, so 50% for the man in George Cooke. Obviously slipping a few hundreds on the cameraman to not try and catch that replay of him bottling the start at the opening stages, ladies and gentlemen. So unfortunately, we might have to look back in the old cameras, secondary cameras off camera. We can tag all the MotorMotion E-Series patrons to come in, and we can set ourselves up a bit of a funny chat there for him. But we have Isa Budsy and Boris Blaznik in 7th place. Nick Cooke, gets to the tags the rear end of the wicked awesome racing driver. Tries to go for a move. Tony Griffin. Wow, that is a full send and a half there. Great move by Tony Griffin. Had to barge his way through, but bumping his racing for the Mad Turtle driver to get himself up into P8. And yeah, very costly there for Nick Cooke after getting himself caught up there. But right at the back there, we can see down in 10th place, it looks like it's going to be Brett Allen, who did serve that 1 second penalty a couple of laps ago. So he's holding up the pack there of Shane Addard and Jason Oswald. So while we have one street to track driver up the ladder up in first place, we have the secondary street to track driver in S2D Goju and Jason Oswald really struggling here, as we have now the handsome Banana, the Dutchman, in the pit lane. So really struggling times here for Jason Oswald. Maybe hasn't had the time to get some laps in, but he's just down the order. You can just see he's losing so much time behind these drivers.
And that does look like it'll be the one-stop strategy for Steph Franson, unless he does decide to do a very short stint on the mediums. We will see, because you can always dive into the pits, get the mediums on, dive back into the pits, get back on the softs. But you do lose a fair amount of time here in the pit lane. The entry is all good. That's nice and quick, happens quickly. Just dive in, as you can see there, and the car disappears. That was Nicholas Cooke on the medium tyres. Ooh, Shane Attard trying a move on Brett Allen. Not going to get it done in the corner, but he might have it done on the straight because he's got the inside line. Jason Oswald would be keen to take advantage of this if he can. Bear in mind, Mark Asseldine is chasing them down. Frenson will be coming out of the pits soon enough. That's very deep from the War Racer, and comes back onto the track, and there's contact between Jason Oswald and Brett Allen. That has sent Brett Allen right out into the kitty litter, unfortunately, and he will be beached for a moment of time before he can get going again.
Well, Laguna Seca means a dried up lake, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously for him, there's not too much gravel traps around here. It's pretty much just all dirt around this layout here. So he'll be fine. He's out of the pit lane. He's out of the dirt there, which you see in the background there. He hasn't suffered too much damage there, just a little bit of a bump. But I think that was all caused by him just running very wide at turn 1 there, George. As we can see there, Steph Franson on the freshest compound of tyres, going to swoop it around the outside, around onto the Rahal straight. Very nice move there by the championship leader. Wasn't held up too much, and now he's got a good, healthy, clear air in front of him, so behind Mark Hasseldine. So very unlucky there for Brett Allen, but you know, I guess in a way you'll just have to try and win it back in the pit lane.
So let's go to our pit lane reporter and a little report on Steph Franson. Did he go for the mediums? Is he back on the softs? What's the situation with our race leader at the moment?
Yeah, he's switched to mediums and he's taken on fuel, but he didn't fill up. So I'm still not sure what strategy he's on exactly. So we'll have to just watch this space, because at this stage he does have the option to dive back into the pits and throw the softs on for the last sprint to the end.
So that's interesting. Scott Taylor in the pits, Tony Griffin into the pits, of course Brett Allen as well just jumping in. He was on the mediums at the start, used a lot of fuel, it appears, on that first stint. Did get 12 laps out of the mediums, but he might have to go mediums again to get the remaining 16 laps to go, because those softs will not last that full distance. Is Nicholas Cooke coming around the last corner, still on P13, Michael Daly in P14, and that is Ench there in the 666 Mad Turtle racing car. Leading the race at the moment, Morgan Davey. Then we've got Nick Pfaff and, of course, Donetti here. Still these three, technically P2, P3, P4 at the moment. I get the feeling they must be on the medium tyre. So let's throw to our pit lane reporter again. Can we get an update on these three, please?
Yeah, they definitely are, George. And they're pretty worn and sorry-looking medium tyres at that. So they're not going to last too much longer. But they've done well to get them to this stage, and they're definitely going to be on one-stop strategies.
There we go.
Sounds about right, because we saw Steph Franson pit around about lap 11, lap 12. So we're looking at about the end of 16, end of 16, end of 17 for these cars potentially to get into the pit lane to do a one-stop. It's very risky, but if they play that one-stop strategy well, it's all up to the Dutchman to really use his nickname in the Flying Dutchman to really pull a gap on Davey, Nick Pfaff and Matt Donetti to try and to keep hold of that P1, because like you said, he did sure fill that car. He is on the medium tyres, but it's all about just trying to pass the traffic, and he looks like he's done that on Mark Hasseldine well before the Andretti hairpin, so nicely done there by Steph Franson. Now he's just got Shane Addard ahead of him, and then a much bigger gap for him to get a little bit more clearer. But he's flying. It says it in his name. A 1 minute 28.8, while we saw some of the drivers in first, second, and third were all in the 1 minute 29.9. So the fresh mediums so far working well for the Dutchman.
Yeah, it is one of those risky things where if you do start on the softs and have to pit early, you will find yourself in amongst traffic. But Franson obviously very confident in his overtaking ability here at this track. Probably realizes that he's got pace on the vast majority of those in the field. So as long as he lines things up correctly, he should have a fair few easy overtakes to do. He's got Shane Attard in front of him now. That'll be the next man that he lines up, so he can get himself back into P5 as he continues his charge to extend the lead. Of course, now that he's on the medium tyres, he knows he's going to have to put a lot of time on the likes of Morgan Davey, Nick Pfaff and Donetti, because they're going to be running softs at the end of this race, so they will be very, very quick in this last few laps of the race. That's Boris Blaznik coming in. Oh, he's trying desperately to get past Shane Attard there. He'll try and get it done now on the main straight. Oh, a little bit of a moment there too. So he's pushing the car to its absolute limit to try and make these overtakes.
He's absolutely flying. Like, I mean, he's called the Flying Dutchman for a reason, but you could just see there, all the way from Rahal to the final quarter, the amount of time he caught up on Shane Attard. Yes, there's a discrepancy on the tyres, but at the same time, the grip that he's got, he was purple in Sector 1, you have to remember, ladies and gentlemen. He was coming through this sector right now, underneath the Cooper Tyres bridge. He was purple by 0.02 on his lap time, then he was 4/10 down in the second sector. So it's incredible what this man can do pace-wise, and he's really using that nickname to his advantage. And now he's got the whole track to himself. The lead pack of Morgan Davey, Nick Pfaff, and Matt Donetti are going to start getting themselves ready to get into that pit lane very soon. I wonder if one of those top three might go for an undercut here, because they're all very bunched up here, as we can see them coming around the final corner on the map there. No, looks like there we go. The first man into the pit lane is Matt Donetti for Hassel 1 Motorsport. He's pulled the undercut strategy on the Astor boys, so can he get himself ahead of them at the end of this pit cycle?
This is going to be a wild race between these three, because they're all going to be on the softs, as I understand it, because we know that they're on the mediums for sure. So next lap, we'll see Nick Pfaff and Morgan Davey jump into the pits, and it's going to be a three-way battle on softs for all these drivers at the top in the battle for P2 and P3. Oh, that's a curb there for Nick Pfaff. Does manage to control it. We were talking about this earlier. The Mazda 3s, you don't really, it's not the fastest line to be jumping on the sausage curbs, but these are very, very stable little Group 4 cars. So as long as you're aware of what's going on as you do ride the curb and get a little bit of airtime.
I was going to say, look at Brent Allen there, right behind Nick Pfaff. Obviously, he's made a pit stop, but just look at the pace that he's got. He's on the fresher compound of tyres, and he's hassling Nick Pfaff, and he's going to try and probably catch up to Morgan Davey. So, yes, obviously lap cars can try to retake that position and really try to unlap themselves if they're on a fresher compound. Yes, but I think Brett Allen's doing the right thing, and he's just kind of sticking back a little bit. He's not in any contention to make any moves or any positions gains on the guys ahead of him, down the back there. So, I mean, it's always great, as we could see the two Astor boys coming into the pit lane, but there we go. He's out of the pit lane. He's going to come out well down in 15th place, unfortunately, but you could just see the difference. Like, you could just see Morgan Davey and Nick Pfaff really struggling. And the key thing as well, what I've noticed here, George, Morgan Davey on 12% of fuel, Nick Pfaff on 15%, whilst we saw Matt Donetti on 20%. So could this be a little gain for Matt Donetti and get himself a P2 in this race?
It could well be, and we'll keep an eye as they will come out of the pits in short order. And I think we'll be seeing Steph Franson rapidly going up back into P1. There he is now, gone past them on the pit straight. Donetti's coming down rainy curve at the moment, so he's got a couple of corners still to navigate, but we know that pit exit is so long. Refueling has begun for Morgan Davey and Nick Pfaff. In the meantime, we've got George Cooke still behind GLR Scotty. He'll be on the medium tyre at the moment. There is Jason Oswald also into the pits. So GLR Scotty and George Cooke will go up into P2 and P3, and they will actually hold that position over the others for the time being, but they're going to be on the medium tyres, both of them, I suspect, all the way to the end of the race.
Nick Pfaff just has got the jump on Morgan Davey. He did have more fill coming into pit lane, but there is Matt Donetti. There's Hassel 1 Motorsport. Can he get himself ahead of the Astor boys? He's going to come so close. Can he squeeze through the middle? He's passed one of them, but Morgan Davey around the outside. to turn 2. They're still going to go side by side as they go to turn 3. Can Martinetti hold on with the warm tyres? No, he doesn't. Morgan Davies swoops around the outside. Very close quarters there for Aston Motorsport, almost coming into contacts on the exit of the pit lane, and they are now neck and neck with each other. But Nick Pfaff has got the place over Morgan Davey, and Martinetti a lot closer this time round, but on warmer, soft tyres, he's going to try and pull out the moves as quickly as he can.
That rapidly got very, very close. Nearly done there by Donede, but unfortunately he will have to settle for where he ended up third in this battle. That's Morgan Davey. Nice move there on Nick Pfaff. Gets it done into the corkscrew. Nick Pfaff's got nothing to do about that, unfortunately, and he'll have to go back into the defending position. It does seem like that is the order of things with this Astor Racing lineup, with Morgan Davey seeming to be the slightly quicker driver, but Nick Pfaff, the Minister of Defence for Astor Racing, I think they are going to be quite happy having him there defending against Donede, but it's a big opportunity for Donede. He's going to really try now down this main pit straight. He's got an opportunity into turn 1. I think he might just be close enough. No, he's fallen a little bit behind, so not the best exit out of turn 11. Deep on the brakes, he's going to try his best, but he will not be close enough. And Nick Pfaff just takes the nice easy racing line through there so he can maximize his exit heading into turn 3.
We'll cross over to Ando Scott as he saw all the action there between the two Astor boys. How close was it, Ando, seeing those two Astor Racing drivers? I think it looked like they almost, pretty much, they're like neck to neck, and like very close to each other on the exit there. I'm surprised they actually didn't make any contact exiting the pit lane. It must have been so close from your view.
Yeah, some great racing after the first pit stops finished up, and Matt Dernedy came bearing down upon them, didn't he? And he nearly got that undercut to work, but he's now switched to the mediums. And the two Astor Racing boys, yeah, they're both on softs now, so they should check out. But yeah, some really close, tight racing into the corkscrew there as well on the previous lap. But it was all nice and clean with no paint swapped.
Yeah, very nicely done there by the Astor boys. Obviously, Morgan Davey just has a little bit of that pace advantage over Nick Pfaff in 5th place, which could be which will be P3 after Scott Taylor and George Cooke, and as they come into the pit lane for one more time. But as mentioned by George Cooke, Nick Pfaff is playing that defensive role so well. We've seen it all season long, ladies and gentlemen. We saw it down at Brands Hatch. We saw it at Spa. We even saw it last time out at Spa at Nürburgring. So he's playing the team game very well. But I wonder one day he's going to try and get over his teammate. He's going to take advantage of a mistake from Morgan Davey and say, you know what, like I can be the Minister of Defence here, but at the same time, I want to make sure I get myself some good points for my championship.
Yep,
I've
exactly
got some
right.
news for you fellas from the pit lane.
Yeah, go
for it.
Yeah, so it looks like most of the runners here now have done their last pit stop. So you can see some real net winners out of this. GLR Scotty, he's up in 2nd place, and I think he's going to the end, folks. He's got fresh mediums, half a tank of fuel, and so he's had a really good race so far. His strategy is working out very nicely. Morgan Davey, the same, but he's on softs. So it's now going to be a battle of softs versus mediums, and the longer lasting tyre versus the wearing tyre. But Morgan Davey is reeling him in quite nicely. George Cooke there, Kung Fu, I think you might be able to shed some light, mate, but I think he might be doing the one-stopper and having a go at making those mediums last till the end, as are all the cars behind him. So these net positions are real track positions, except for the leader. I have real concerns if the leader's going to be able to make it to the end. He's got less fuel and less tyre than everyone else. So I'm really, we should watch this. He might be pitting soon.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really interesting between Steph Franson, Morgan Davey, Nick Pfaff, and Donede. We will keep a very close eye on that battle as it does evolve. Yeah, fast, soft runners from the Astor Racing team, and they will be charging after Steph Franson. And if he's in trouble with regards to fuel and maybe even tyres, he's going to be running very, very slow at the end of this race. We have just seen that battle of 3. Donede is going to be coming through George Cooke as well in a moment's time, and I can shed you some light on that. Yes, the Kung Fu Racing team there on the one-stop strategy, trying to make things last. This was sort of expected to be in a situation where we were going to be overtaken out on track. These three much faster drivers than George Cooke, and he's not going to be fighting these positions too much. There's Nick Donetti going for the move as well. And I think, as I understand it, GLR Scotty is probably on a similar strategy, just trying to eke things out, make things last as much as possible. He was in a battle with George Cooke for a number of laps at the beginning of this race until GLR Scotty just got away and started making some really, really good laps and taking the time out of the top spot. But he's soon going to have to contend with these three as well, because if we see, there is GLR Scotty and there is Morgan Davey in charge.
Yeah, Morgan Davey set himself a 1 minute 27.1 a couple of laps ago. He's actually gone quicker, 27 flat. So the man from Asta Racing, the 33, is absolutely flying. He's going to make a move on Scott Taylor within the next few corners, I'll say, ladies and gentlemen. Place your bets on what corner he's going to take the move. Looks like he's lining up a move on turn 2. He's very close. Takes a wider line to get a much faster exit on the exit. Nah, he's just going to stick back.
He will indeed, and GLR Scotty has been very, very quick through that first sector. He's extremely good through the Andretti hairpin.
Down at the corkscrew, I would say, for Morgan Davey.
Yeah, I'd say so, because in Rahul straight, I mean, he's just closed up so much into turn 5. The lack of grip really showing on Scotty's car there, looking left, looking right. Won't have an opportunity into turn 6, because if you overtake there, you're completely mad. But this is going to be the run. Will it be an inside send or an outside send? Let's see.
Looks like he's a little bit too far back, but he's going to try and stick the nose in. He's got more grip under his belt there, and right, a nice clean move there at the corkscrew. Called it, ladies and gentlemen. So there you can place $1 under my account right there.
Yeah.
But no, it was a very good pace there by Morgan Day. But as you were saying earlier, amongst the likes of Scott Taylor and yourself in position 6. The key thing you have to remember as well, ladies and gentlemen, the top 6 at the start of this race was pulling away from the driver in 7th place. So at the time, Andrew Ernst of Man Total Racing was occupying that P7, but the gaps between 6th and 7th was absolutely huge in that first stint. So it's not going to be a bad strategy for both Scott Taylor and George Cooke, but it's just going to make sure they have to hold on to those tyres and make sure the guy who occupying 7th place at the moment, Boris Blaznik, doesn't close up with 7 laps remaining.
I will say Boris Blaznik has shown some really, really good pace out here today. Really unlucky that he had the accident at turn 6. GLR Scotty running very, very wide on the exit of turn 3. Does manage to get back into the tarmac, but he'll have a little bit of a hassle through turn 4 until the tyres do clean up. But yeah, Boris Blaznik, he has been absolutely flying. Remember, he did have top 6 start, as I remember it. I think it was P5 at the beginning. Was running then up ahead of another. I think he was actually battling with Donetti as well for P4. Then that accident at turn 6 unfortunately sent him to the back of the grid, essentially. He's fought back up at P7. That's excellent work. And if we just see the difference there, there's only 3 or 4 corners between George Cooke and Boris Blaznik. So there's every opportunity for Boris to make it back up if he's on good tyres. In fact, I think it's an opportunity to ask our pit lane reporter, could you give us an update on Boris's situation? Is he going to be fast at the end of this race, or is he going to be managing his tyres and fuel?
Looks like we've lost contact with our pit lane reporter, so we'll hopefully get back to him very shortly there. But yeah, Boris Blaznik looks like he is slowly catching up. He is starting to get himself into the low 1 minute 28, or sorry, a high 1 minute 28.9 on that last lap, but then he's been getting himself 28.7 as his fastest lap. So he's losing a little bit of time, but probably not as much time as what George Cooke is setting at the moment in position 6. But it is still the Flying Dutchman that has gone through, that is still leading the way ahead of Morgan Davey. And we can see there on the mini-map as well. I want to try and there's so many triangles going through all the corners here. I'm not so sure which one would be Steph Frenz, and I'm not so sure if that's him coming onto the Rahal straight right now. There it is, yeah. So he was actually on the exit of turn 6 going up to the corkscrew. Lap time setting about 1 minute 29.6. High 28, so obviously, yes, he is on the medium tyres, but like Andrew Scott said, he is running on fumes, ladies and gentlemen. So will he come into the pit lane very soon to top up that car? Will these Asta boys take advantage if he has to come into the pit lane? So hopefully now we've got our columns back with Andrew Scott. If you could take us back to the situation between George Cooke and Boris Blaznik. Can Boris close up to George Cooke in P6?
Yeah, sorry guys, just had a little issue with my headset there, but Yeah, that's going to be a close one. He very much could. He's on very fresh mediums compared to George Cooke, just to put it politely. I don't know how else to say that one, George. But yeah, he could be reeling him in. But the leaders too, Morgan Davey in second place, he's lapping of the order of 2 seconds a lap faster than the leader right now. So this race isn't over yet for the winner either.
Yeah, exactly. And he must be on fumes as well, Lando. He must be running on an oily rag, the man in first place. He looks to be running out of fuel because 29.6 versus Morgan Davies 27 flat a couple of laps ago. 27.9 was his last. So he's really putting that car on a knife's edge with 4.5 laps to go.
Yeah, he's running out of tyres and fuel, actually, guys. So he's committed now, I think, to the one stopper. I don't think he can pit again now and make it work. So he's just going to have to make this work with the short and see if he can hang on. Yeah, he's got the track position. Let's see if he can hang on.
Well, we do have four, or technically 4.5 laps remaining. If the gap is being reduced at the pace it is right now, that's about 1 to 2 seconds. Let's call it 2 seconds for argument's sake. It's about 8 or 9 seconds that Morgan Davies is going to be able to make up. Is that the distance, though, out on track? I think Steph Frentzen, unless he has a couple of really, really bad laps and starts putting in 130s, I think he's in a position to take this home with a reasonable level of comfort. But Morgan Davey, if he can be doing the low 27s and really pushing the car, then he has got every opportunity. Of course, Steph Frentzen just come through turn 1, whereas these guys are just halfway through the pit straight. So there's still quite a bit of distance there. I don't know what that is, but that's got to be at least 15 or 16 seconds by my calculation.
Yeah, so that rules out the pit stop. That rules out a pit stop for Steph Frentzen because Morgan Davies really closed up that gap. I remember recalling when Morgan Davey and actually Nick Pfaff actually came into the pit lane. They were at least 3-4 corners behind Steph Frentzen, and now they've closed it up to probably at least a couple of corners on track. So they're coming Asta Racing, but it might be a little bit too little too late unless the straight to track boys have got the numbers wrong. But so far, it's on a knife's edge with the fuel numbers between Steph Frentzen.
That's why it was so critical for Steph at the beginning of this race to get a good launch on his soft tyres and start pulling that gap, because that gap is what's basically giving him the ability to hold off the faster runners in this later stage of the race. And if he continues to do decent lap times in the 29s on those warm mediums, then he should be in a pretty good position to win the race. And hopefully he has not miscalculated his fuel this time out, because if you do that, then you're in real trouble. Crawling around the track at 50 kilometers an hour is not fun, especially if you've got competitors on faster tires charging up behind you with plenty of fuel on board. So let's look down our grid quickly at the moment. Of course, it is Steph Frentzen P1, Morgan Davey P2, Nick Pfaff P3, Matt Dernedy in P4, Scott Taylor in P5, then George Cooke in P6, Boris Blaznik, and he's getting closer to George Cooke at the moment, but Boris Blaznik in the 17 car in P7 right now. Then Shane Attard, who started well down the grid, has actually had a really good second stint in this race and has found himself up above Tony Griffin. Tony Griffin also having a pretty good second stint as well, in the top 10 now after being essentially dead last after the first few laps, has picked up a 1.5 second penalty. Then of course it is Ench, the 666 Mad Turtle racing car. He's got Jason Oswald chasing him down, and Jason will be keen to get himself up into the top 10, get some extra points to streak to track, pulls over to the left, and of course that will be a position change. So P10 now with Jason Oswald. Our privateer Nicholas Cooke in P12, Michael Daly in P13 for GLR, Mark Hasseldine in P14 for Hassel One Racing, and then of course Brett Allen in the last spot at the moment, being blue flagged by our P4 runner in Dernedy.
Yeah, so I was actually going to say there, very honourable mention there was to Shane Attard to get his car into the top 8. So very good race there by the second driver from Kung Fu Racing, and Shane Attard in 8th place, started down in 12th, making his way all the way up to 8. So very solid recovery drive for the car 22 in Shane Attard, making his return to the Trak Racer TCR Cup, where he was one of the key drivers of Astor Racing, which was then before Scarborough Motorsport, as well as in the early days of Strike Tech Racing, and then just took a little bit of a hiatus away from racing just for a few months, but now he's back, recharged, freshened up, and putting himself a really good position there in P8, getting some very solid points for Kung Fu Racing for George Cooke and Shane Addart inside the top 8.
He's actually not too far away from Boris Blaznik as well. I think maybe we throw to our pit lane reporter with 3 laps to go, or technically 2 laps to go now. Boris Blaznik versus Sir Dids, that's Shane Attard. Ando, Scott, can you give us any highlights of what this battle could turn into?
So yeah, folks. So I'm sorry, a little bit confused. Who are we looking at?
This is Isa Budsey and Sir Dids, P7, P8.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we've got Sir Dids in P8 on worn softs, and he's going to be good to the end on them, I think. But the distance ahead to Budsey, who's on mediums that are still worn but a little bit fresher looking, I think that the distance might be too much to make up in a lap and a bit.
Okay, there we have it. Yeah. So probably not a battle for P7 at this stage. I think Boris Blaznik is making some progress on George Cooke in P6, but it's probably not going to be enough as well. So on the penultimate lap of this race, lap 27 out of 28, and Gilles Scotti as well, looks like he is still holding on to Matt Dernedy though, so this could potentially...
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, this could potentially be a battle, but I mean, Dernedy's been driving fantastically well today, as has Scott Taylor, and they look like they're fairly equal on pace at the moment as well.
Well, Matt Dernedy had a very good opportunity to get himself P2 at the end of that pit cycle there. So as we saw, Matt Dernedy was so close to taking P2 away from the Astor boys, but unfortunately there just couldn't make the moves. Morgan Davey got him around the outside of turn 3, and then I think that just kind of shook a little bit of confidence. Lost his confidence a little bit trying to keep up with the Astor boys. So Matt Dernedy, unfortunately, holding on to 4th place with Scott Taylor right on his bumper. Nick Pfaff, Morgan Davey rounding up the podium. So there's no position changes between the top 4 in this race. It's all staying line of stern, but coming on around for the final time is the Flying Dutchman. So you see a wild Hassel 1 Motorsport driver and Mark Hasselden going through the corkscrew onto the gravel trap. And what can we say, George? Steph Franson, as he's coming around the track, has played this fuel game to perfection. And car 72, the Flying Dutchman, who can stop this man? He's very Max Verstappen-esque here at Trak Racer TCR Cup at MotorMotion E-Series. But for the final time, coming onto the start-finish straight, it is going to be the Handsome Banana, the Flying Dutchman, and Steph Franson taking the checkered flag and the victory here at Laguna Seca for round 4 of the TCR Cup, presented by MotorMotion E-Series. Then Morgan Davey and Nick Pfaff rounding up the podium of Astor Racing in 2nd and 3rd place. Matt Dernedy in car 251 just holds off Scott Taylor in 4th place, with Scott Taylor right behind in 5th place, and a full commemoration there for George Cooke, the broadcaster, the commentator. Everyone loves him. But is that Boris Blaznik right behind him? He's weaving the car. He's trying to get the car off fumes. No, it's not. It's actually Brett Allen. I thought that was Boris Blaznik there. Had my heart in my mouth there. I saw.
I'll be honest. I thought it was Boris too when I was driving the car. I genuinely thought I was in trouble. Turns out I was absolutely wrong. Luckily for me, then, of course, Boris Blaznik, a great drive back for the war. The Wicked Awesome Racing team here, really well done. Back into P7 after that incident in turn 6 early on. Then Shane Attard, a great run up the grid too. He was quick on the softs, and he certainly had the confidence around Laguna Seca to bring himself back up into things. Likewise with Tony Griffin, got caught behind a crazy Kung Fu racing guy. Some mad person who decided to have a bit of an incident at the start, has made his way back up into P9 in the top 10. Excellent job there for Mad Turtle Racing. Then Jason Oswald in P10. So P10 and P1 for the Street to Track team today. Then it is, of course, Malevolence here for Mad Turtle Racing, the other Mad Turtle car. So Ench will take home P11. Our Privateer on debut for Nicholas Cooke takes a decent result there as well. And we will now jump over to our race results and get a little look at the rest of the grid. So we've just gone through all these at the moment. Of course, Steph Franson, Morgan Davey, Nick Pfaff, your top 3. Matt Dernedy in P4, Scott Taylor P5, George Cooke in P6, and then Boris Blaznik in P7. Here's a look at the remainder of the grid. Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. So great drive there by Shane Adder to get himself inside that top 10. Even the top 8's a good solid points haul for Kung Fu Racing. Tony Griffin, Jason Oswald rounding up the top 10. So Jason Oswald getting that position, as we saw on the broadcast on Andrew. Andrew did pick up that half-second penalty with 2 laps to go. Then Nicholas Cooke, very solid drive there by the Kiwi, the privateer in 12th place, obviously having his first time out here at MotorMotion E-Series. So it's great to see some new names making themselves available for the racing here at the Trak Racer TCR Cup. Michael Daly, Mark Hasseldine, and then rounding up the 15-man grid is Brett Allen, who was a lap down on the leader and the victor of Steph Franson for Street to Track. So my goodness, that was a very good race, very good strategies there. And I don't know about you, Andrew Scott, who's down in the pit lane, but I'm just trying to think to myself, how did the Street to Track boys get those numbers right? Because we saw he sure-filled the car. He must have been on fumes. I'm surely you heard a cough coming down the start-finish line.
Yeah, I'm hearing murmurings now that they actually made a mistake. They did underfuel him because his last lap was a 31.9. He was leaking oil big time. And he drove beautifully to manage it, though. He avoided a potential absolute disaster. But they nearly clutched defeat from the jaws of victory there, because the Astor boys were just bearing down on him. So their last lap was in the low 29s, and one more lap and it would have been all over. He would have thrown away a victory.
Yep, exactly right. Well, let's talk driver of the day for Lobby 1 before we take a short break and head towards our Lobby 2 coverage. I'm still thinking of who mine is, and I'm very tempted to be extremely biased, but I certainly have a couple of ideas. But let's throw it over to Nick and Andrew. Who's your driver of the day today, please? And of course, let us know in chat as well who your driver of the day is for Lobby 1.
No, it's going to be a tough one as well, ladies and gentlemen. So, I mean, if you guys have any ideas of who we can give driver of the day to, I mean, do let us know, because this is a very tough one. Because, I mean, honourable mention can go to the Astor boys and Morgan Davey and Nick Pfaff for getting that comeback drive and making the one-stop work for them, but just not enough to catch up to Steph Franson. So, I think on pure pace at the start of the race and working a strategy masterclass from Street to Track, I think I'm going to give my driver of the day to Steph Franson, the Dutchman, pulling out a rabbit out of the hat and getting that victory and getting the maximum points that you can. Pole position, victory, lights the checkered flag for the Dutchman.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
I'm going to give an honor.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to give an honourable mention to once again Steph Franson. He managed that little slight case of underfueling, and he got 17 laps out of his mediums to end the race. So that's a tremendous effort. But guys, I've got to give driver of the day to position 6. Our very own George Cooke. He's come in. It's his first race as a substitute driver for his team. He's had a disaster off the start, and he's let's say not quite managed his tyres perfectly, but he still managed to keep it all together and bring home a result easily in the top 10. So he's my driver of the day for me.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. I will also have to give an honourable mention here for Steph Franson. My driver of the day is actually going to go to P8, Shane Attard, who got caught up by his team leader being an absolute silly person off the line, found himself right down the back of the grid, but had a really, really good run through the second half of the race and found himself up in the top 10 and also in P8. So Shane Attard's going to get my vote for driver of the day. So we have a three-way tie. So chat in YouTube watching the premiere, then please do let us know who your driver of the day is so we can break this tie and find out who the Lobby 1 driver of the day is. Now, that's our Lobby 1 coverage for the time being. A couple of housekeeping items before we go on a short break and then head to the Lobby 2 coverage. You are, of course, watching the MotorMotion E-Series Trak Racer TCR Cup. It is the beginning of our American leg of Season 3, Laguna Seca, one of 3 American circuits we're traveling to for the next 3 races. And then we finish off, of course, in Oceania. Go and check us out on www.motormotioneseries.wordpress.com, and also go and press that like and subscribe button. Hit the notifications as well so that you know exactly when our broadcasts are coming up. We will be right back in 5 minutes, and we will see you very shortly for Lobby 2. Oh, welcome back to MotorMotion E-Series. The Trak Racer TCR Cup coverage for round 4 continues right now. Lobby 2 coming up for your viewing pleasure in just a few moments. We've had a fantastic Lobby 1. All the teams going at it. Some very interesting strategy calls here at Laguna Seca. And now we look forward to seeing what the likes of Lobby 2 can bring to the circuit. So let's go and get some information because qualifying has concluded for them. So let's see exactly how things lined up on the grid. Well, to start off, it is Lewis Atkinson on Corp Esports. He's taken pole position there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was about to say we're going to see some very awesome racing here because we've got some star-studded lineups here starting up in Lobby 2. As you mentioned there, Lewis Atkinson did take pole position away from Andrew Scott. So the fast Kiwi and the leader of Corp Esports in MotorMotion leading the way ahead of Ando Scott in the Me Cougar driver development. Mazda 3. Then we have Matthew Joinson rounding up the podiums there in the qualifying. So 3 teams inside the top 3 with some very fast drivers right behind. Mick Hill in 4th, Luke Stone for Lightning Motorsport. Again, putting in some solid consistency for the number 1 driver at Lightning Motorsports to try and get his way up through the field. The man that almost took victory last time out at the Nürburgring Grand Prix, almost took it away from Lewis Atkinson with a final lap pass on turn 1. Just missed out, unfortunately, so he'll be looking for some redemption and getting himself back up onto the podium steps. Down in 6th place, we have Jeremy Crow for PCR. Rob Jacobs rounding up the top 7, the second of the Hoon Cork drivers inside that top 7. Then we have Mark Pacheco for PCR. In 8th place, Dean Vanderzan, CP Motorsports. Down in 9th, Mitchell Cullen for Cullen Racing Team, rounding up the top 10. So CP Motorsports well down the order there. Not as low as we never really see them that low before. So Dean Vanderzan has a lot of work to do to get his car up towards the front. Then we have Matthew Hassan just outside the top 10 for Juice Motorsports. Troy Britnell in 12th place. And then we have a substitute driver for Dave Chucky is Benjamin Blaker for CP Motorsports, making his return. Obviously the leader of ISA Motorsports. Last time they came here for season 2 of the Trak Racer TCR Cup, has ventured away from MotorMotion for ISA Esports, but has now come back as a substitute driver. So it's great to see him back in the field. And our 14th man, we don't have a 14th man here, so just trying to look back and see who the driver missing is. Actually the Colin Racing Team driver in Chris Patajak. So he's actually doesn't look like he's here this evening, so whether he either missed qualifying or he's going to be running late, I'm not so sure. We'll have to look and wait and see what that CRT driver is doing. But gentlemen, it's going to be a very spicy race here, so let us know in the chat below. 28 laps around Laguna Seca, who can take out the victory? Will we see Lewis go back-to-back from the Nürburgring, take his momentum of form from the Nürburgring to Laguna Seca? Will we see Ando Scott put on a late charge and get himself a victory? Or will we see Mick Hill, who's been flying under the radar for Me Cougar Driver Development, can he get himself another victory here? So let us know in the chat and let us know in the comments. But gentlemen, I'm ready. I'm ready to go for Lobby 2. This is going to be a great one.
Sure is. Okay, let's head down the track because the cars are ready. We're out on grid and it's time to get Lobby 2 started here for Laguna Seca in round 4. Let's go. The lights are on. Lights 3, light 4, light 5. We're switching it up, but it's going to be Lewis Atkinson leading us away from Andrew Scott, from Matthew Joynson, and Mick Hill, the 2 drivers for Me Cougar. Going to be trying up the inside line. It's a great start from Lewis Atkinson. He's moved well clear of Andrew Scott, who has not had a great launch. It's compromising Mick Hill as well, just that little bit. Matthew Joynson does manage to hold it around the outside. Mick is going to try around the inside of the second part of the Andretti hairpin. Some cars off track in the background as well. Matthew Joynson has held on beautifully to that P3 spot as they head through turn 3, now into turn 4. Lewis still on a good run. Andrew Scott now under pressure from the Juice Motorsport driver of Matthew Joynson. He's going to go defensive immediately, does not want to lose that inside line into turn 4 this early on in the race. Matthew Joynson tries around the outside. Nothing will come of it though at this stage. And Mick Hill also now under pressure from Luke Stone and Jeremy Crow in tow. There's some side-by-side action down the grid as well. And we'll keep a very close eye on that as they head up the Rahal Straight for the first time. Into Corkscrew we go. No side-by-side in the top 7 as it stands right now. Luke Stone going to try, maybe find a way to get past Mick Hill as soon as possible. It might be a little bit of a mix of tyre compounds here, as we did see the same in Lobby 1. And Lewis Atkinson sort of echoing the Flying Dutchman. He's the Flying Kiwi right now because he is out front, building a gap as they head into the final corner of lap 1. Andrew Scott been under all sorts of pressure. There is another Hoon Corp car of Rod Jacobs going very, very deep at turn 10, does get it back on the tarmac and will continue ahead of Mitch Cullen behind Jeremy Crow. And that is Jeremy Crow. No, that's Luke Stone going for a little bit of a move. He wants to get the inside line into turn 1 on Mick Hill. Can he do it? That is the question.
Absolutely, some great racing on the opening lap there, but it looks like all the drivers have maintained their positions. The top 7 has actually maintained their positionings with Lewis leading the way and Jacobs right down in 7th place. So no orders have changed so far in the opening lap there. Some very close quarter racing amongst all the drivers. Looks like Mitch Collin has actually gained a couple of positions to move himself ahead of Mark Pacheco in position 8. But here we have Mick Hill playing defense for Luke Stone, who looks to be on the charge here, starting down in P5, still maintaining P5 at the end of lap 1, looking really racy in the early stages, trying to get a move done on the Me Cougar driver, who is the Division 2 champion in Season 1 and back-to-back teams champion in the Trak Racer TCR Cup. But Luke Stone compromised his exit there on the Rahal Straight, which gives Jeremy Crow an opportunity to go around the outside, going onto the corkscrew. Luke Stone holds the inside line. Oh, very close. They were almost looking to go side by side. It can be done in these small hatchbacks, but I'm not so sure if you'll be able to do it in the real world. It's going to be very risky if you do it in the real world because it is a very steep drop there as well, George.
It certainly is. It's very scary. That was a very brave inside move there. It took a lot of gravel, of course, as well. It's going to make his tyres slightly unfortunate. Not particularly the maximum grip, let's just put it that way, through the last few corners. But he will have those nice and clean up as he does make the charge against Mick Hill. Once again, he's really close this time. Will he be able to do a send? Unlikely at this distance. Up the inside is always an opportunity. Mick Hill will break very, very deep, though, to fend off that move. That is the way that you do it. Mick Hill taking a couple of pages out of the defensive handbook and putting them front and center on his windshield. Who needs to see ahead when you need to defend behind? And that's what Mick Hill's got to do at the moment. Luke Stone will try again. He's really quick through sector 1 at the moment. Makes me think that he's probably on the soft tire compound at this stage, and Mick Hill's just got to be very, very wary of how close Luke Stone is. In the meantime, Lewis Atkinson out to a couple of seconds gap from Andrew Scott, who has also made a bit of a gap. Oh, Luke Stone has a little look up the inside of turn 5. Doesn't get anything done there, though. Just trying to put the psychological pressure on Mick Hill at the moment. Doesn't seem to be having any effect, though, on Mick Hill. What a screwed-on head that man has.
Oh, the Scotsman is really trying to send that car right on the inside of turn 5. So he's so close to making a move on Mick Hill. He's just pressuring Mick Hill into a mistake there. But Mick Hill, you know, at the experienced head of MotorMotion E-Series, and especially in the Trak Racer TCR Cup, the experienced head playing very well for the man in car 3, as we saw Matthew Johnson run just a little bit wide on the dipped tyre on the dirt there of Rainy Curve, but he's lost a little bit of time to Ando Scott there, which gives Mick Hill an opportunity to try and close up on the Juiced Motorsports driver, who's actually called for a new look, a new paint scheme that we can see here, sponsored by Tyre Power, still running under the Juiced Motorsports entry, but it's different colours here that we are seeing for Juiced Motorsports. The 777 still leading the way in position 3 ahead of Mick Hill and Luke Stone. And again, Luke Stone is putting all of the pressure in this world to try and close up of Mick Hill and try and make the move on Mick Hill, because Ando Scott just pulled a bit of a buffer over Matthew Johnson at the moment. And look at Stoney, absolutely incredible. He's got such good pace on him. Is he going to send a move down on turn 5? He did have a look on the previous lap. He did stick a nose there. He's got a full car with side-by-side rubbing door handles. They're two drivers. They go up the hill, going on to lap 4, up to going on to the Rahal Straight, the kick before the Rahal Straight. And Luke Stone has got the move done, but it looks like he's kind of compromised his exit on going on to Rahal. So can Mick Hill respond and get a move done on the corkscrew? Looks like he's a little bit too far back, but there's a position change for Luke Stone ahead of Mick Hill in position 4, and he's got some pace underneath him.
Certainly does. Luke Stone did take the inside line there, rode over the sausage curb on turn 5, and that meant that he did run a little bit wide and maybe had a bit of paint scraped between this Lightning Motorsports car and the Me Cougar car, but nonetheless, I mean, Mick Hill did his best to hold on in that situation, but once there's a car ahead and you're on the outside of turn 6, you are better off backing out every single time. Of course, Matthew Johnson has fallen back into the grasp of both Luke Stone and Mick Hill, so Mick Hill won't have to worry too much, because if Matthew Johnson is able to hold up Luke Stone just that little bit, Mick Hill will have another opportunity in short order. What a nice battle we've got going at the moment. This is technically the battle for P3, because Matthew Johnson is not getting away from these other two behind him at all. Andrew Scott as well, not showing incredible pace at the moment compared to Lewis Atkinson, but I'm sure he is working the strategy at the moment. We do know about the Me Cougar supercomputer, and that'll be hard at work for the last week or so, calculating and crunching all the numbers in association with this. Luke Stone, he's going to make a move. Turn 5, Luke Stone for the number 53 car. Obviously loves turn 5 because he's made 2 moves there in 2 laps.
Wow, I think we're going to have to rename turn 5 Stone Corner for Luke Stone getting 2 moves done in 2 laps there. But you could just see the pace that he's got, that you saw over the helicopter shot there going into turn 3, how much of a gap he actually put on Mick Hill. So you could see he was held up so much by Mick Hill, obviously in their own rights to fight for position. We are on lap 5 of 28, ladies and gentlemen. No one's lapped at this early stage, but yeah, Mick Hill just kind of holding up Luke Stone, and Black Friday, if Matthew Johnson was also being held up a little bit by Luke Stone. So Luke Stone now back up into P3. We did see at the back there's some position changes. We see Jeremy Crow's actually dropped out of the top 8. He's actually looks like he picked himself up a bit of a penalty on those last couple of laps there. 1 minute 34 on his previous lap, so he must have made a mistake or must have picked himself a penalty cutting the corkscrew, but that's dropped him outside of the top 8 and 2 positions behind his teammate in Mark Pacheco. And as we did get news Mitch Collin, his teammate in Chris Patajak, there was an engine misfire going onto the grid. So he did do the formation lap, but they had to pull the car into the pit lane, and they could not get that car ready for this race. So unfortunately, the retirement for the CRT driver, and Mitch Collin, the sole driver for that team running in P8.
Exactly right. So we've got Rob Jacobs in P6, Mark Pacheco in P7, Mitch Collin in P8, Jeremy Crow in P9, Dean van der Zandt, the other Juice Motorsports car, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. I think that is another new livery.
CP
It is
Motorsports
CP
driver.
Motorsports. So there we go. I am getting things absolutely wrong. It was bound to happen at some point. It's rather inevitable. Dean van der Zandt, though, is that a new look livery as well? Is that what they were running last week? I can't even remember at this stage. It's a nice looking livery. He's in P10 as it is right now. Then Troy Bretnell for his own team. And I get the feeling that I want to give Luke the Lightning Luke nickname. So Lightning Luke and Luke Curve, I think two very good, appropriate, a quarter name and a nickname there for him. Then, of course, we've got Matt Hatton here, the number 45. That is the other Juice Motorsports car, which does look to be a different color this time. It's definitely got the new livery on it, so looking good. And then, of course, Ben Blaker, CP Motorsports replacement driver for Chucky. He's in P13 at the moment, but still holding on. So this is his first time, I believe, in these cars. Maybe a little bit of evidence to that fact right there. Does get going again. I was saying he was holding on to the back of the grid quite nicely. That will put him a little bit further down, though. Probably as far back from the grid as Lewis Atkinson is out front of the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lewis is actually has pulled the trigger and is actually doing exactly what Steph Franson is doing in Lobby 1, just trying to build a gap and trying to extend that lead. So he's trying to mirror what the Flying Dutchman did in Lobby 1. So he's got himself a good gap over Ando Scott in P2, and then Luke Stone right behind in P3. But I was about to say, yes, they are new liveries for the CP Motorsports. Their brand new sponsor, I believe it's Aussie Tyres that is the new sponsor for CP Motorsports. So they're running a new look for the rest of the Trak Racer TCR Cup for in Season 3. So with Dean van der Zandt in 10th place, so a lot of work to do there, and I'm very surprised as well. We actually thought he would actually get to grips with these cars, because we saw some very good pace as we've seen him over the past previous seasons in the Trak Racer TCR Cup, as well as we saw in the Surefire Supercars, the Player One GT3 Championship. Maybe he's just not one with these cars at the moment, or maybe it's just going to take him a little bit more time to get used to it, because so far we're not seeing too many impressions from the CP camp at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we know that Dean van der Zandt with the GT3 class cars, Group 3 cars, he is an absolute weapon in that category. He just hasn't seemed to quite got to grips with the FF style cars at the moment. But we know that he's a very, very capable pair of hands, and CP Motorsports will be still stoked to have him on board, of course. Just need to find that conversion of talent onto on-track results for CP Motorsports. They've got plenty of time in the rest of the season, as we do have another 4 races after this. We are coming up to half race distance now, or half season distance, I should say. I do want to throw it over to our pit lane reporter now for an update on the top 5, specifically Luke Stone, because he's been flying at the moment, and I suspect that he might be on a different compound to those around him. Andrew Scott.
Yeah, he is indeed, George. It was very, very critical that he cleared those drivers that are now behind him, because, yeah, he is on the softer tyre. He's got to make it work for him now, and he's not managing to catch Ando anymore, although he did gain on him, but it's now starting to drift back a bit, because I think the mediums and the softs are crossing over. I think Ando's starting to make inroads back in towards Lewis as well. So not sure if Lewis, who also checked out on softs at the start of the race, has been able to eke out enough of a gap here to make his choice of tyre work for him, but that remains to be seen also.
Yeah, so 128.699 there for yourself, Andrew Scott, and there was a 28.9 as well for Lewis. So yeah, the crossover definitely happening right now. The lap before, lap 7 for Lewis Atkinson, was a 29 flat. So he has lost a lot of pace, went very, very quick, very, very early on to try and build that gap, that 27.666. Still the fastest lap of this race. Still very much echoing what we saw with Steph Franson in Lobby 1, where he set a really good fastest lap, probably not going to be beaten by those out on track, potentially. We did see that with Steph Franson. But nonetheless, I know we did actually, because Morgan Davey, I think, took the fastest lap in Lobby 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he did. He took a
did.
27 flat was his fastest lap. But yeah, it's kind of mirroring what we've usually seen with Lewis Atkinson over the years. Is over the season so far. You know, sets the pace early on, takes the lead, really tries to build a gap as quickly as he can, as much as he can. But I'm not so sure if he's going to be able to make that work. And we saw what happened at Brands Hatch. He had the lead. He pulled the advantage over Ando Scott and at the likes of the Juice Motorsports driver in Matthew Johnson, as well as Scott Taylor in that first stint. But as soon as it came to the pit stops, he dropped well down the order, down the back of the pack. So I won't be surprised if we do see something familiar or similar for Lewis, because as we saw in Lobby One, Steph Franson I think had a much bigger gap, and I think his times relative to Lewis Atkinson was actually quicker than Lewis Atkinson this time round. So Lewis is dropping time. Ando's keeping consistency in that mid to high 28s, and Lewis is dropping pretty quickly because he's not able to stretch that gap.
Yep, exactly right. And of course, we are now at lap 10. So within the next couple of laps, or even this lap, we will see those soft runners start to come in for their first pit stop, and probably going to be favoring the one-stop strategy here, as we did see in Lobby 1. Matthew Joynson's been taking curbs here and there, parts of the gravel / the desert here and there as well. Mick Hill's now putting a lot of pressure onto this man in the 777 car. We've also had back in P6, Mark Pacheco has moved up into P6 ahead of Rob Jacobs. That did happen about 7 laps ago or so. Then Jeremy Crow has made his way back up ahead of Mitch Collin and is now sitting in P8 for the PCR entry. So he's going to be chasing up there for the attempt to get into P7 ahead of Rob Jacobs and maybe catch up back to his teammate in Mark Pacheco, so that they can work together in this race to continue things. The grid is starting to spread out a fair bit, so these pit stops are going to be not only critical for the drivers and their strategies, but also going to start to mix up the grid just that little bit and introduce that extra bit of interest to the race. Do see a couple peeling in. That is going to be Lewis Atkinson and Luke Stone, both in on the soft tyre, the rest of them all on mediums, as I understand it. I think it's a perfect time to throw over to our pit lane reporter for an update on the now top 3 in Andrew Scott, Matthew Joynson and Mick Hill.
Yeah, they are all staying out on mediums, and looks like everyone's going for a one-stopper in the top half of the field, but in different orders. So yeah, the 2 pitters now are getting rid of their softs, and they're going to have to get 18 laps out of their mediums. So that's that's going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah, but the thing is, it is doable. We did see it in Lobby 1. We did see Morgan Davey, Nick Pfaff, and at the time, Matt Donetti actually really get those tyres to lap 15, lap 16. So if they're going to go for 18 laps, that's going to be another big stretch there, and running on an oily rag to get that fuel out to get to 18 laps. So it is doable, but obviously you have to rely on those top 3. We know Ando Scott, the man in the pit lane and on track, as also very well renowned as the tyre whisperer, but also Matthew Joynson has been working very hard to work on his tyre preservation, so he's also another driver to keep an eye on, and Mick Hill as well. So if there's anyone that can do 18 laps on medium tyres and save fuel, I believe it's that top 3.
Yep,
I can tell you right now that they won't be. The Mickey, because supercomputers definitely came back and said, do not do 18 on mediums if you don't have to. But the thing is, with the 2 people that have pitted so far, they absolutely had to, because their softs were gone.
Yeah, well, this is the difference, isn't it, between pushing really hard on the softs or trying to make the softs last just that little bit extra. If you can get to 12 laps, it's only 16 on the mediums, which makes them so much more grippy and viable as a racing tyre once they do get into that 16th lap. And I can tell you from bitter experience that the last 2 laps on an 18-lap medium strategy are absolute hell at a place like this. You get absolutely no turn and no grip whatsoever, and you feel like you're just bleeding time out on track. So if you can do 12 on the softs, that is definitely the optimal strategy. We've seen a few who have done that make some really good inroads on their medium stint, and I suspect we will see a few be able to do that today. It'll be very interesting to see how Luke Stone and Lewis Atkinson will do this. Now, interesting, we have a switch up here. Luke Stone has ended up ahead of Lewis Atkinson. That's got to come down to refueling.
Yeah, it looks like it, unless there was a mistake there by Lewis Atkinson coming out of the pit lane and maybe in the opening couple of corners that maybe just couldn't switch on those medium tyres and maybe just ran wide onto the dirt. We might cut over to Ando very shortly if you can give us any news on what happened there, but it looks like it could be a position change from the pit lane. Maybe Luke Stone did underfuel the car a little bit. That's why he's got a bit of a big buffer over Lewis Atkinson in 12th place, but I think if we're looking at a gap like that, that big, I have to feel it was a mistake on Lewis's behalf. Maybe just ran wide on turn 2 or turn 3, maybe collected one of the sausage curbs, the infamous sausage curbs in the infield section. It was only introduced in the year 1988. Beforehand, it was more or less kind of like an oval track at Laguna Seca. So if we take it back to 1987, before the infield section was created, just for FIA safety precautions for the then 250cc World Motorbike Championship, that was introduced at the time. You kind of had to think that back in the day it was more or less an oval with the infamous corkscrew still there as the fame hall, as the name that is represented around Laguna Seca. But it would have been a crazy time to skip that Andretti hairpin and just go straight to turn 5 without any problems. So these cars, if we were back in the time, the cars would be flying around turn 1 going into the Rahal Straight.
Exactly right, and it was incredibly high speed and so dangerous, especially with the track undulating and bottoming out suspension all here and there, and that meant that you go so fast into turn 6, which would have been turn 3 at that time. It was just completely nutty. There are some videos on YouTube of the track in its original configuration, and they are completely nutty. I'm glad that we don't go racing like that anymore. I do quite like the infield section. They're quite tricky corners, but they are good fun to navigate. Mick Hill has found his way up ahead of Black Friday. That's Matthew Joinson. So Mick Hill will be moving up into that P2 spot. Matthew Joinson obviously starting to maybe find that his tyres are not doing what he wants them to do. They are on the mediums, and big mistake from Mick Hill. It's going to let Matthew Joinson try around the outside. Mick Hill will hug the inside. A switcheroo maybe from Matthew Joinson. He'll have the run down the pit straight and in towards, up the hill, then in towards turn 1. Let's see if he's able to make anything happen here. This is probably quite important that they don't fight too much, given that they're going to have Lewis Atkinson and Luke Stone making their way through at some point. Under braking, a late maneuver there by Matthew Joinson. Going to try on the inside in the second half of the corner. Mick Hill has to give him space, does so very nicely. Both of them touching the grass and the sand during it. Matthew Joinson won't be able to make the move happen. Mick Hill does a beautiful defensive move into turn 3, parks it on the apex, and of course Matthew Joinson taking the shallower line there, ended up slightly on the gravel and over the sausage curb, which did cost him a little bit. What a battle between these two for P2 right now.
Yeah, very good battle there. Just kicking up a bit of dirt was Joinson at going into an Andretti hairpin, and then Mick Hill on the exit of the hairpin. So both these drivers pushing the limits of these medium tyres, while Ando Scott is coming up to the corkscrew pretty much right now as these guys enter the Rahal Straight for the 14th lap. We're nearly half race distance, ladies and gentlemen. So at the top, I believe it's going to be the top 8 has not made a pit stop yet. So Ando Scott leads the way ahead of Mick Hill and Disposable Hero. Black Friday and Matthew Joinson in 3rd place. Mark Pacheco is not too far behind these guys as well for PCR in 4th place. And then we have Rob Jacobs 5th, Jeremy Crow 6th, Dean Van der Zandt and Mitch Collin rounding up the top 8. So these guys are yet to make pit stops. They look like they are going for that one stop, and they are really trying to stretch those tyres out as much as they can. But I'm very keen to see what Mark Pacheco can do here, because he's really closed up on these guys here. He actually lost positions at the start of the race. He actually dropped out of the top 8, and he's worked his way up back into P4, albeit with Lewis Atkinson and Luke Stone coming into the pit lane. But he might throw himself into contention here, maybe not for a podium, but potentially a top 5.
Yeah, and that'll be a good result for him in PCR, especially given the fact that Jeremy Crow is not too far behind either, though he'll be under pressure from Rob Jacobs. I don't think Rob Jacobs is coming to the pit either, so he's obviously had some sort of issue there, but Jeremy Crow has made up a number of positions in rapid succession. Whether that's due to pit stops or not, we will see. I think it probably is, but nonetheless, Jeremy Crow, who sort of lost positions early on in this race, now making his way back and trying to catch up with his teammate. He really will want a slipstream from his teammate and to be able to get a little bit of action up there with him. Otherwise, he's going to have this Hooncorp Esports car in his rear mirror the entire rest of the race, most likely, and probably Rob Jacobs will be going for a move at some point as well. Then, of course, Dean Van der Zandt, CP Motorsports driver, in the background in this battle, so he could be on for a potentially great result too. Then Mitch Collin, then of course we've got the Lightning Motorsport car here of Matt, and then Britt's Lightning, Troy Britnell, and there's H.C. Lewis has managed to make it up ahead of Luke Stone. So I think there's another mistake there, as the leader of this race, Andrew Scott, does come into the pit with 28% fuel, so both of them seems to have made a mistake there, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we thought Lewis made a mistake coming out of the pit lane, looks like Luke Stone has made a similar mistake a few laps later. We can see there on his delta time, a 1 minute 39.7 on lap 13. So that's a huge loss for Luke Stone. So these boys are really compromising themselves while we have Ando Scott and Mick Hill, disposable hero, in the pit lane. They're refueling their cars right now. They're about to go onto the soft tires. These guys at the back end are on medium tires, but they don't look like they've gained any time at all on Ando Scott. We'll have to wait and see as the cars come out of the pit lane very shortly. Lewis is still ahead. Ando Scott is refilling the car. They do take the lead away from Ando Scott and Mick Hill, but there goes the 787 coming out of the pit lane. Luke Stone is coming up to the Andretti hairpin, so it's a very narrow exit. A very narrow pit exit for our drivers here. So we can see there Ando Scott leaving the pit lane behind Luke Stone. But watch out for the 787. He's going to be flying through these cars with only 13 laps to go.
Yeah, and critically, Lewis Atkinson did get stuck there behind Troy Bretnell. That is for position, and that's going to cost him some time. And actually, now that we think about it, because Lewis and Luke are both on the medium tyre, they're going to have a very rapid Andrew Scott coming up behind them. Now, Andrew Scott and Mick Hill both on the softs and going for 12 laps. So they're going to have to look after these tyres quite a lot. And I think it's the perfect opportunity now to have our pit lane reporter give us an update on the battle between Luke Stone, Lewis Atkinson, and the two Cooke drivers.
Yeah, the Cooke guys are looking good now. They've come out. The supercomputers told them that it's a 15 medium, 13 soft optimal strategy. So they've stuck to that, and they're looking good, because I can tell you right now, folks, Luke Stone, when he pitted, he did not refuel. So he is on a two-stopper. Whether that's intentional or not,
wow.
we don't know, but he is definitely on a two-stopper. Lewis did not make any mistakes or anything, so he's still in relatively clear air and looking okay to the end. His mediums are good, his fuel's good, but as George said, the Cougars are coming at him hard.
So that's actually very interesting that we're seeing there with Luke Stone not refueling there, George. So obviously the reason why he did get that gap over Lewis Atkinson, I thought it was a mistake on Lewis's behalf, but from the calls there in the pit lane, it looks like just no fuel went into that car. So he wanted just to get that medium stint out of the way so he can put on some fresh softs. But I think that's going to compromise him. I don't think this is the strategy that's going to work out, unfortunately.
We have yet to see a top 5 finisher do a two-stop at the moment, so I don't know how this is going to work out for Luke Stone. And of course, he made that mistake as well on lap 13. That was a 1:39.7 lap, and that is going to cost him a huge amount. He might as well, with the time lost on that, which is about 10 seconds, he might as well have refueled in the pit stop, because that's the time it takes. The difference between the pit stop timing is about 13 seconds if you refueled, or didn't. So he's essentially, with that mistake, cost him all the time that he supposedly had gained out on track. He should be out there at the front, gaining time, putting a distance between himself and Lewis Atkinson. Right now, he's stuck in this position trying to chase down Lewis Atkinson with two Cooke drivers on soft tyres chasing him down. That's an uncomfortable position for Luke Stone and Lightning Motorsport. So he will have a lot of work to do in this race if he's got any hope of continuing to get a top 5 position.
Yeah, we can see the PCR boys have come into the pit lane right now. Mark Pacheco and Jeremy Crow in Paco and Birdman. But yeah, like even the PCR boys, they're coming out of the pit lane. They're about to come onto some fresh soft tires, while Luke Stone passes them in the pit lane. They're going to be passed. He's going to be passed by those two PCR drivers when he comes into the pit lane, and they'll all be on the same strategy. Obviously, albeit maybe Luke Stone will have 1 or 2 lap pace advantage on those soft tires, but at the same time, he's going to lose out to those PCR drivers, and where he was comfortably ahead of them. Because you can see he runs wide on the exit of turn 2 going to turn 3. Ando Scott can see the dirt kicking up on him, just trying to make that Cougar Mazda 3 dirty enough as it is, just trying to kick up a bit of dust on that 787. But you can just see the grip that he's got on those fresh tires. Last lap it was 1 minute 27.5 set by the 787. A driver in Ando Scott is really closing up on Luke Stone here. Doesn't look like he's going to make a move going into the corkscrew. It'll be very ambitious if he throws it down the inside. He's a smart head. Is the wily old fox in Ando Scott, holding on to P3 at the moment. He's going to wait for the opportune time to make a move on Luke Stone, but potentially Luke Stone might come into the pit lane, because if he didn't refuel, and we saw the PCR boys on 11%, 9% fuel, he must be running on the same numbers as well. Does he pull left? No, he doesn't. He's going to go for another lap here.
He was indeed in the purple inside of the car, replicating the purple lap set on the outside as well at 127.553. Not going to be pipped by anyone this lap, I suspect, unless maybe Mick Hill's got something to say about it. We will see. But Andrew Scott on a charge. He's going to maybe have a look into turn 1. Let's keep an eye on this. Luke Stone, he's going to lose so much in the pit stop once he has to do it again. Andrew Scott going on the inside line. That is a textbook move there from Andrew Scott. Quick as you like.
Beautiful.
Done and dusted. And that is it. What a stunning move.
And there is Lewis Atkinson. Here, Lewis Atkinson has not pulled away as well, George. Even though he's on the medium tyres, he's not pulling a gap. Ando Scott, I'm predicting him within the next couple of laps, maybe 3 laps, he's going to get past that Hooncorp driver and take the lead of this race. It could come even sooner. Who knows?
Yeah, it could well do. I mean, you know, Lewis Atkinson at the moment, last lap there, 29.3, whereas Andrew's been on these 28, low 28s and 27s since his pit stop, and he'll be continuing to go faster at least the next few laps. The tyres that he's on right now are soft, so they will start to drop off in 3 or 4 laps time. So Andrew Scott's got to try and maybe find a way to do this sooner rather than later. Nonetheless, Lewis Atkinson's tyres will be degrading as well. He'll be sitting on the medium tyres for the next 9 laps of this race, and they will already be in a pretty sorry state. That said, Lewis is usually pretty good on saving his tyres, so maybe he's just trying to save them a bit. He has been consistent on his lap times, all 29s, so it really does come down to whether Andrew Scott can get track's position away from him and then defend for the remainder of the laps as the softs do drop off underneath where the mediums will be running.
Yeah, Luke Stone stayed out for another lap there in position 3. So if we can get an update from Ando Scott on Luke Stone, how low is he on fuel? He must be running on an oily rag there. He's so close, as we can see a battle still brewing between Mick Hill and Matthew Johnson. But Luke Stone, he must be throwing up oil, and he must be throwing oil on the track because he must be out of fuel. He must be running out of fuel.
He is. His fuel light's flashing, and I think the pit boss is calling him in this lap. If not, it'll definitely be the next.
Oh, but you can see there as well, you can look on the mini-map there, you can see Mark Pacheco, Dean Vanderzand, Rob Jacobs, they're all in that pack there, so he's going to drop, you know, he might drop even outside the top 10, George. I mean, it could be a horrible strategy that the Lightning Motorsport drivers is doing, because it's not working out for him.
No, it's not working out, and you know the pit lane transit time is just so long. It's not like Brands Hatch where you jump in, you put some fuel in, you jump straight out. This is jump in, put some fuel in, and then wait for 15 seconds as the car slowly traverses down the last part of the pit lane and then out through that corner, the left-hander, to bypass Andretti hairpin. So this is going to cost Luke Stone a lot at this stage. He'll definitely be behind Mick Hill and Black Friday. That's for sure. So he will be outside the top 5 as predicted. 3% of fuel. He's going to need at least 20 or 30% in there to make it to the end of the race. Oh, Matthew Johnson trying around the outside. Mick Hill gives him absolutely no space, a little bit of contact between the two. This is a lovely battle evolving here. Now this battle is for P3 in this race. So this is the battle for the last podium position. Mick Hill's got a lot of defending to do against Black Friday Matthew Johnson, who's on a bit of a charge at the moment and looking very comfortable in this Mazda 3, as he has done in the last 3 races as well. Remember the endurance race, he ran out of fuel at the end and nearly lost a P2 position, which was only gained through a penalty that was done by Luke Stone. So let's see. Mark Pacheco goes through. Dean Vanderzand goes through. Rob Jacobs goes through. Jeremy Crow goes through. Mitch Collin is going to go through as well. He's going to be outside the top 10. You absolutely called it. He'll be behind all these other drivers. Matt's going to go through as well. No, I think he might just be in front of Matt.
Might be just ahead. Yeah, I think he might lose out a little bit because, as he said here, the inside line here, as well as it is very quick, the Gran Turismo pit exit makes the car go really slow on exit. As we see on the leaderboard there, Ando has made the move on Lewis Atkinson and takes the lead on lap 21 of 28, so about 7 laps to go until the end of this race. Ando Scott on the soft tyre has taken the lead away from Lewis Atkinson down in P2. The strategy that did not work out for Lewis Atkinson worked out very well for Steph Franzen in Lobby 1, has not played into the hands of Lewis Atkinson this time out in Lobby 2. Ando leads the way in P1, Lewis P2, and the battle pack that we will be keeping our eyes on very soon is the battle for P3. Who will take it out? Will it be Mick Hill? Will it be Matthew Johnson? Let us know in the chat who will take out that last step on the podium, because that one is going to be very spicy.
It certainly will, and unfortunately we did miss the overtake there, so I'm sure it was a very nice done move. Lewis Atkinson will be a bit gutted with that. I think so far the only person to have executed a soft first strategy successfully has been Steph Franson. That's the only person so far that I've seen unequivocally getting that strategy absolutely right. Other than that, starting on the mediums seems to have been the right thing to do. I mean, the speed late on in the race certainly has been to the advantage of most around them. This will be a battle here for P3 that'll continue throughout the remainder of the race. Mark Pacheco is a fair way behind, so it is definitely the top four in essentially one pack, although Ando Scott and Lewis Atkinson both still checking out quite substantially from these two right here. But Matthew Joinson,
He got to run.
He's got to run. He's got to make it. He's got to get it done, so to speak. Oh! Gets his nose cut off by Mick Hill. Goes for a late defensive move, almost too late there. Nearly catches Matthew Joinson unaware and almost sends them both into the gravel.
They both went deep going into the corkscrew. You could just see the tyres just like locking up there, and they still going hammer and tong there. The two boys, the Me Cougar driver and the Juice Motorsports driver battling hammer and tong for the last step on the podium there. Mick Hill runs a little bit wide on the exit. I don't think he's going to pick up a track limit penalty there, so he'll be very thankful for the GT gods to not give him that half second. But Matthew Joinson has lost a bit of time there to Mick Hill, so that's giving Mick Hill a little bit of a breather, at least on lap 23 of 28, to try and potentially keep that track position and try and maybe pull a little bit of a gap over Matthew Joinson, who just looks like he cost himself, especially on the exit off the corkscrew.
Yep, exactly right. I think let's throw it to our pit lane reporter. A couple of things before we do that, though. Jeremy Crow has taken the fastest lap of this race, a 1:27.298. That man has got some serious pace, and what a lap that was. Oh, Matthew Joinson, huge moment on the exit of turn 4. Runs it deep, but stays on the power, and the car nearly says, no, thank you, see you later. Luckily for him, it does get back under control, so some good effort on the counter steering there. Let's throw it to our pit lane reporter, Andrew Scott. Give us an update on the battle between Mick Hill and Black Friday Matthew Joinson.
Yeah, Mick Hill there making his fresher softs work for him there. He made a nice clean move to get into P3. Now he's gapping Black Friday because Joinson, folks, is struggling a bit on tyres. His front right tyre is well over half worn, and with those couple of little mistakes and slidey moments he's having, he could be in trouble here and start dropping off. But I tell you what, they're both catching Lewis. They're both catching P2. So this is going to be a really interesting finish.
That is a lot closer than I thought. That's a 1:28.2 there from Mick Hill. Last lap for Lewis was a 1:30. So there's the 2.5 per lap. I'd say they're probably only separated by about 5 seconds out on track. So that means catching distance is before the end of this race. Maybe a last lap battle for P2. That's going to be incredible. Me Cougar maybe setting themselves up for a 1-2 finish here. That could be very, very good for them. It will be very good for them if they do manage to pull that off. And Lewis has just got to find a way to hold on now. He's only got 5 laps left, or 4.5 laps to hold on to this position, and he's probably going to have to be going a bit faster than a 1:30. We've just had another fastest lap of this race be set. Luke Stone on the fresh tyres, a 27.293, only 2/1000ths of a second faster than what Birdman and Jeremy Crow has done. And that is incredibly good pace. It's qualifying pace there. Luke Stone will be very keen to get back up. Let's go for a very quick update and see where he's at. He's back up into the top 10 now. So only one position taken away, though, and he has got a long distance towards Colin Racing Team, though. I don't think that's happening, unfortunately, for him.
Oh, that's such hard luck there for Luke Stone. I don't know whether that was a strategy call to not put fuel in the car. I don't know whether it was his team crew or himself say that he wanted to not pour fuel in the car, but that's just very questionable. Just a bad call there, unfortunately, for Luke Stone there. He's down in 10th place, you know, getting bragging rights for fastest laps. I don't think you get points for fastest lap. I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, just down in P10 and really well out of there. He was fighting for the podium position as well, ladies and gentlemen. He was, you know, he was charging through. Turn 5 is Stone corner, is Stone curve. Unfortunately there, he's not really gaining any positions to make moves down to turn 5 anymore, because we've seen the likes of Mark Pacheco 5th. Dean Vandersand is actually pulled a rabbit out of the hat to get himself up into P6. So maybe starting to get a little bit of tyre working on that CP Motorsports entry there to get himself P6. But Rob Jacobs in 7th and Jeremy Crow inside the top 8. So the PCR boys doing all right this time round. Mark Pacheco was actually close to Matthew Johnson and Disposable Hero in Mick Hill battling for that battle for P3 in the first stint, but it looks like he's dropped so far back. Unfortunately, he's not able to maintain that position because they did go for an overcut strategy, and the overcut did not work for PCR.
That's right, Rob Jacobs has just run very deep on turn 5. It's going to give an opportunity to Jeremy Crow, who will be taking that opportunity if he can. Oh, contact there between the cars. Rob Jacobs been sent out onto the gravel, and that is unfortunate. So Jeremy Crow just trying the switcheroo in turn 6. Did get it slightly wrong and went into the back of Rob Jacobs, who's now got very dirty tyres and nearly misses the corkscrew entirely there. He's got a lot of work to do now to catch back up to Jeremy Crow, who does move up into P7, Dean van der Zandt P6, Mark Pacheco in P5, and the battle, unfortunately, for Black Friday is all over because his tyres are gone. He's had a crap lap that time out, a 132, very, very poor lap, and is actually maybe putting Mark Pacheco into a position where he could get a sniff at the back of the Juice Motorsport car by the end of this lap. Meanwhile, Mick Hill is right on the back of Lewis Atkinson. This battle is absolutely on, and I do believe we get 4 points for fastest lap. Maybe Andrew Scott can confirm that for us, but I think there are points given for the fastest lap of the race as well.
Yes, there are. There's a point or two for fastest lap, so it's worth going for. So that's some sort of consolation prize for Luke, at least this race. And yeah, the stewards would have liked to have seen Birdman give that position back there, folks. I think race control's going to be letting the stewards know about that one. But I tell you what, Birdman is looking good. It'll be a shame if he cops a paddling for this, because he's got good tyres, and I expect him to maybe make up another position or two before the end of this race.
Very fascinating indeed. But we're seeing Mick Hill there really closing up. Lewis Atkinson, that's 3 laps in a row in the 1:30s, and while we have Mick Hill in the 1:28s, he's high 1:28, but still, he's so much quicker than Lewis Atkinson. There's 2 laps to go on this, ladies and gentlemen. Can Mick Hill make the move on Lewis Atkinson within this next couple of laps and get a Me Cougar 1-2, just like we saw at Spa-Francorchamps, where we saw Mick Hill take the victory ahead of his substitute teammate in Ridwan Hamza, but it's going to be Ando leading the way, and Mick Hill trying his best to get that Me Cougar car into position 2 and try and get that lead in the team's championship to go a 3-peat in the team's championship. He's so close to the Hoon Corp driver. He's thinking about a move into turn 2, can't execute it there. It's all single file here going to turn 3. Can't make a move there, but he's got to stay right underneath that rear wing. He's got a good run. He's going to go for the outside into turn 5 in Stone Corner. Can he get that through can he hold it around the outside? He won't. Lewis is going to park it on the corner. Very nicely done there. Very good racecraft for Lewis Atkinson. He needs to hold on, Lewis. He's only got a lap and a half to do it. Coming up to the Rahal straight, Lewis has got a bad run, and Mick Hill's got the perfect exit. They're going to go side by side. He's got the overlap on the Hoon Corp driver, with just a little bit more straight line speed. But the Hoon Corp sends it down the corkscrew, and that is a beautiful move there. If he can just hold it around into the inside, that gets the outside line. Lewis not giving up there, and what a send that was for Mick Hill. Ballsy move there by the car number 3. That pulls him up into P2, and that gives Me Cougar that upper hand 1-2 in this championship fight.
Wow, he had the tyres, he had the confidence, and he had the speed to do it, and he got it done. Full confidence, and got it done very, very nicely. Lewis, of course, tried the switcheroo, tried to get himself back up into that position, tried to hang it on the inside, but it was to no avail, unfortunately, for the Hoon Corp Esports driver. And we saw, as we went on board earlier in that lap with Mick Hill, Lewis Atkinson just got no grip out there whatsoever. You can see full lock through Andretti hairpin. The car does not want to turn. Full understeer happening, unfortunately, for the Hoon Corp Esports Mazda 3, and that unfortunately has cost him that position, but he will still hold on to this podium position. I don't think Black Friday is going to have anything to do about it going forward. Mark Pacheco is now in chase for P4 as well. It's going to be potentially quite close, depending on how good Pacheco's tyres are compared to Black Friday's. I get the feeling that Matthew Joynton in P4 is going to be struggling on those tyres quite significantly. He was when he was battling with Mick Hill. Yeah, you can see the understeer also happening on the Juice Motorsport car. So it is going to be really down to the wire for P4 as well. P1, P2, P3 all stitched up, done at this stage. Question is, who's going to be P4 at the end of this race? It is the final lap. We'll go switch to Andrew Scott, who'll be coming around the final corner in just a few moments. Is there going to be a move for Mark Pacheco? Let's see. He's going to have a good run through here. Let's quickly switch up, because across the line, Andrew Scott, for me, Cougar Driver Development Team, does take the victory beautifully into the wall as well. Mick Hill will be P2, Lewis Atkinson P3. Oh, Matthew Joynson defending beautifully, but Pacheco's going to have the run on him. He's going to be on the outside line. It's right down to the wire. Late braking for Matthew Joynson. There's a contact.
Oh, this is
Sausage
close.
curb.
Oh, a little bit of door banging there, side by side between Matthew Joynson and Mark Pacheco. That might have to go. I think Pacheco is not happy with that move there that was sent by Matthew Joynson. That might go to the stewards room, but as predicted by the pit lane reporter, Jeremy Crow has gained a position on Dean Vandersen. So that's the PCR boys, 5th and 6th. They'll be happy they've got the team points there, but I don't think Pacheco's going to be happy with Matthew Joynson there. You can actually see him on the cool down lap just next to him. He's just waving the finger saying, "I don't know what you did there, son. That was not good from you."
Too right. Wow, what an end to that race we have just had. It was definitely a lunge by Matthew Joynson to try and make it back up into the P4 spot, which he will take home at the end of this race, but there's a lot for the stewards to discuss and look over at the end of this race. So it is, of course, Andrew Scott for me Cougar taking out the 53 points for the race win. Mick Hill will take out P2, a 1-2 victory there for me Cougar. They'll be stoked with that. Tons of team points and plenty of driver points as well for the two of them. Then Lewis Atkinson, Hooncorp Esports, unfortunately started pole, has dropped to P3 in that race. Just that late issue with his tires, just couldn't keep the pace with those two charging Me Cougar cars. Then Matthew Joynson, in a slightly controversial move in the last corner of the last lap against Mark Pacheco, takes home P4, Mark Pacheco P5, two PCR cars in a row with Jeremy Crow in P6, getting a late move on Dean van der Zaan for P7. Then Rob Jacobs for Hooncorp Esports takes out P8, followed by Mitch Collin in P9. Luke Stone with an unfortunate and very bad pit stop strategy. Two stopping, tried it out, did take home the fastest lap, so will get himself an extra point there in this race for Lightning Motorsport, but still only just getting back into the top 10 ahead of Matthew Hatton in P11 for Juice Motorsport, then Troy Britnell, P12, Ben Blaker, of course, on his debut for CP Motorsports, replacing Dave Chucky, takes home a P13 in this race, and of course Chris Patterjack, DNS this time for Column Racing Team with that car issue early on. Chaps, that was a race and a half there from Lobby 2 and a Me Cougar 1-2. Well, I think we have to go straight to Andrew Scott and talk to him about his driver of the day.
Yeah, beautiful race, guys. The Me Cougar guys very happy with that result, and I've got to go with Mick Hill for this one. Starting in third, he got shuffled down a little bit at the start. He was in traffic for most of that race, unlike his teammate, and he still brings home the P2 with a beautiful stamp licking moment there into the corkscrew on Lewis. So sexiest move of the round and driver of the day for me goes to Mick Hill.
That's fantastic there, obviously. Not being biased at all, but...
Not at all, not at all.
Absolutely. No, but I was going to say, before I get to my driver of the day, I want to just talk to you, Ando, quickly. Obviously, we saw two different strategies, both Lobby 1 and Lobby 2. We saw Seth Franson going for the soft tires and running the mediums to the end, and then we saw yourself running the mediums and the soft tires. What does the Me Cougar computer actually tell us about those two strategies between what you did and what Steph Franson did? I wonder what the gap would have been. I wonder what the finish time would have been between you guys, because if we had you two in the same lobby, I think it'd be very close. But what does your supercomputer tell us?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to some battle royales in the second half of this season with my compatriot there from street to track. I think it's going to be close. I think the time difference this round was about the 5-second mark between the two of us, so we're very even on pace. And yeah, the Me Cougar computer comes with the same result every time for this series. It wants us to start on mediums because you can eke out an extra lap or so out of softs if you run them second in this race. In this race, that's just how the game works. But also the added benefit of starting on mediums is that you're not risking getting stuck amongst medium runners while you're on your softs. Because when you're on your softs, you need clear air to make hay while the sun shines. The last thing you want to be doing on softs is being stuck amongst medium runners.
Yeah, we saw that with Luke Stone as well. As he was charging through the field, he was on the soft tyres, got past Mick Hill and also got past Matthew Joynson to get himself temporarily up into P3, but unfortunately his two-stop strategy did not work this time round. That definitely would have happened to Steph Franzen if he got his, if they actually did not fill the car up properly. So unfortunately there for Luke Stone, a very disappointing P10 for the Lightning Motorsports, 10th and 12th place for Luke Stone and Troy Britt now. But now it's time to go for my driver of the day pick. Yeah, I have to agree with Ando Scott there. I think it's going to have to go to Mick Hill. Very nice move there. Very good racing as well. The racecraft that he brings to me Cougar Driver Development. We've seen it over the years and throughout the last 3 seasons of the Trak Racer TCR Cup. He's a very patient man. He learns so much. And he just delivers always, every single round, every single time we see him on track. He might be just behind his teammate. He might be playing that second driver role, but anytime he gets himself into a good strategy and some good racing, we see Mick Hill. His name always pops up, you know, as a very solid driver. So yeah, that's gonna be 2 votes for Mick Hill. It's all down to you, George. Who have you got in mind?
Certainly is. Well, here that's a 66% ratio already for Mick Hill, so he's technically already won regardless of what I think. But actually, I really do think Mick Hill put on a great performance today, as did Andrew Scott. I mean, the overtake there early on Lewis Atkinson, we did miss it on track, but nonetheless, he did get it done. I mean, the strategy overall for me, Cougar, today, absolutely on point. And they got it done out on track, which is the key thing. So I will also be giving my driver of the day to Mick Hill. An honourable mention, though, to Lewis Atkinson. Obviously did qualify pole, so had a great qualifying session. Nearly held on at the start, nearly put that gap on, but just couldn't quite get enough into that gap to secure himself a position at the end. And it unfortunately nearly put him down into the battle for P4 and P5 as well. But nonetheless, an honourable mention for Lewis Atkinson as well. So, let us know in chat who your driver of the day is. We've got 3 points on Mick Hill today, so he seems to be the current leader, the current winner of the driver of the day, certainly here in the commentary box. Let us know in chat as well how you found Lobby 2 and who your driver of the day is. Looking forward, we now have round 5, Watkins Glen, as we head to the 2nd out of 3 races in our American leg for 23 laps at sunrise at the beautiful Watkins Glen, a personal favorite of mine. Going to be a very interesting one because at the beginning of the race, the season, we did have Brands Hatch, then Spa, basically an equivalent to Laguna Seca and Watkins Glen, with Laguna Seca being more about the corners, less about the straights, whereas Watkins Glen being more about the straights and less about the corners, although the corners are quite critical, as with Spa and Brands Hatch. So I think a nice comparison there between our European and American legs of the race. So make sure you tune in. Of course, the race will be held on the 18th of June. We'll have the delayed broadcast happening about 5 or 6 days after that. So keep it tuned on the YouTube channel and on the website and on the Facebook page as well. So give us a like and subscribe here on the MotorMotion E-Series YouTube channel. And of course, check us out on www.motormotioneseries.wordpress.com. Now, let's go and have a little look, because we do have, now that we're at the halfway point of our season, we do have an update on our driver standings and our team standings. So we're going to start off with our driver standings, and we're going to hand over to Nick to run us through who's on top and who's falling behind. We've got the top 8 in the driver standings available for you right now.
So 3 rounds done in Europe, and our first round of the first leg of the American leg here at Laguna Seca is all done, set in stone, and it is the Flying Dutchman that is taking this championship by storm on 269 points for street to track. So the man that is debuting in his first season at MotorMotion E-Series and his first round at the Trak Racer TCR Cup is flying the Dutch, is singing that Dutch national anthem with pride and taking that P1 in the halfway point of the championship. Lewis Atkinson for Who Corp Esports. That, I'm pretty sure that the win at Nürburgring has helped him so much to get himself up into P2. He was well down outside the top 3 as well before Nürburgring. So Lewis Atkinson really making some inroads there on 245 points. And then we have Mick Hill for me, Cougar. That is our top 3, 225 points. So some big gaps between separating the top 3, but we are only halfway, George, and we have some very fast contenders down the order there as well. We have Matthew Joynson, the man that's being very consistent, Nick Pfaff as well, 2 drivers that are very consistent in all of their races, and Luke Stone with 218 points. I think he definitely could have been one of the drivers that could have had more points next to his name.
Certainly could be, and there's only 1 point between Matthew Joynson and Nick Pfaff, and another single point between Nick Pfaff and Luke Stone, so that is very close right now. And there's only 5 points from Matthew Joynson and Mick Hill, so it's very close. It's all still on for the battle for P3 in the Drivers' Championship. Then, of course, Andrew Scott, who has missed a race. That's why his points are lower than you might expect on 206. And Matt Derneddy for Hassel 1 Motorsports finds himself on 198 points in the 8th spot. I think next time round we will bring you some more drivers in the championship standings, but nonetheless, that is your top 8, and then we're going to look over to the team standings. So, Me Cougar Driver Development on 459 points, leading the way in the team's championship as we've gone through the halfway point of the season. Hoon Corp Esports in P2 on 432 points, and then Street to Track 410, definitely being held up by the Flying Dutchman there, and holding on to P3 very nicely. Then it is PCR in P4, Lightning Motorsport in P5, a reasonably close battle going on between them, 9 points between P4 and P5, and then 10 points down to Juice Motorsports in P6, followed by Asta Racing, only 2 points behind the P6 position, sitting in P7 currently. And continuing to look down, Mad Turtle Racing, Wicked Awesome Racing, P8, P9 for them. Hassel 1 Motorsport, P10. Gridline Racing in P11. Column Racing Team in P12. P13 to CP Motorsport. And rounding out in P14, ironically, my favorite number, Kung Fu Racing on 237 points. Still in it to maybe not finish last in this. It's going to be a battle between CP Motorsports and Kung Fu Racing for that P13 position. We've got 4 rounds remaining. Next week, we go to Watkins Glen, then we go to Daytona, then it is the legendary oceanic race of Bathurst, and then we will round out the season at Suzuka in Japan. What a rest of the season we've got. We're looking forward to it very much. A huge thanks to the admins in the background who do such good work with a limited team, and the stewards as well, who are always very, very busy and do great work for everyone out there. Please keep your thanks rolling in for the admin team behind the scenes at MotorMotion. They are putting their all into this amazing series here for the TCR Cup. A big thanks, of course, as well to yourself, Nick Pautasso, excuse me, and Andrew Scott for the continued excellent coverage and analytics and commentary. You chaps are doing a fantastic job, and we are all here in the commentary box very much looking forward to the next 4 races in this season as we continue the American leg of Season 3. That is going to be our coverage here at the Trak Racer TCR Cup for today at MotorMotion E-Series. Remember to give us a like and subscribe. We hope you enjoyed the coverage here tonight. Go to www.motormotioneseries.wordpress.com for more information, and look us up on Facebook as well. There's a group. Get involved. Get racing. We've got plenty more coming up for this season and beyond for 2024. We're going to leave it there. Big thank you to everyone, and we will see you for the next one.